How often do you lie here at night wishing you could just stop knowing everything for a moment? Stop being the expert on your own worries. Stop rehearsing all the ways tomorrow might go wrong. Tonight is for something different. Tonight is for the kind of not knowing that actually brings rest. For the next 3 hours, you're invited into stories from across Buddhist traditions about people who discovered that their certainty was exhausting them, that their expertise had become a cage, that fresh eyes could see what experienced ones had missed. These are contemplative reflections inspired by Buddhist wisdom, created for rest and gentle reflection, not as medical or therapeutic advice. If you'd like to support this channel and help others find peaceful sleep, please take a moment to subscribe or share this video with someone who might need it tonight. What you'll receive in these hours: teachings on approaching each moment without the weight of past knowledge, stories of masters who stayed curious even after decades of practice, and permission to rest in not needing to understand everything right now. These aren't lessons to memorize, but invitations to let your mind soften into the fresh simplicity you knew before you learned to be an expert on your own suffering. Let your body begin to settle where it lies. Feel the weight of your head against the pillow. Notice the coolness of the sheets or the warmth of the blanket. Your breath doesn't need improving tonight. Your thoughts don't need solving. You don't need to become anything other than what you already are. These stories come from 13th century Korean mountain temples, 19th century Vietnamese monasteries, and Japanese meditation halls where monks discovered that expertise can blind us and innocence can illuminate. You're not alone in this exhaustion from knowing too much. Humans across centuries and continents have lain awake exactly like this. Tonight, you can rest in not knowing. And in that not knowing, something true can finally be seen with fresh eyes. In the autumn of 1247, in the mountains north of Kyoto, there lived a Zen monk named Eizan who had forgotten how to see the moon. This was not a small problem. Eizan had been practicing Zen for 23 years. He had memorized every major sutra. He could recite the names of all the Zen patriarchs back 7 generations. He had sat Zazen meditation for so many hours that his knees bore permanent calluses, and he could hold the lotus position longer than anyone else in his monastery. The abbot trusted him. The younger monks respected him. Visiting scholars sought his interpretations of difficult passages in the sacred texts. But Eizan could no longer see the moon. He knew everything about the moon. Of course, he knew which sutras used the moon as a metaphor for enlightenment. He knew the difference between the finger pointing at the moon and the moon itself. He had given Dharma talks about the moon's reflection in water, about how 1,000 rivers reflect 1,000 moons, yet there is only one moon in the sky. He had heard all the old stories about masters who attained awakening while gazing at the full moon. But when he looked up at the actual moon hanging in the actual sky, all he saw were his own thoughts about the moon. It had been happening gradually, first with the moon, then with other things. When he walked through the monastery garden, he no longer saw the camellia flowers. He saw impermanence demonstrated through seasonal blooms. When he heard the temple bell, he no longer heard the sound. He heard the call to present moment awareness. When a new student asked him a simple question about breathing during meditation, Eizan found himself giving a 40-minute lecture on respiratory metaphors in classical Zen literature. The student had fallen asleep. One cold morning in early winter, Eizan was assigned to work in the monastery kitchen alongside a young man named Kodo, who had arrived only 3 weeks before. Kodo was clumsy and slow. He didn't know where anything was kept. He dropped a bowl of rice on the stone floor and stood there looking mortified until Eizan waved him toward the broom. "Have you studied the Tenzo Kyokun?" Eizan asked as they prepared the morning meal. The instructions for the Zen cook? It explains the proper way to wash rice. The correct attitude toward vegetables. No, sensei, Kodo said, his voice apologetic. I don't know how to read yet. I'm still learning the characters. Eizan felt a small flash of irritation. How could someone practice Zen without reading the sacred texts? How would this boy ever understand the teachings? They worked in silence for a while. Eizan chopped daikon radish with the precise, economical movements he had perfected over years. Each slice exactly the same thickness. Each motion a meditation on form and emptiness, though he would never say so aloud because that would be prideful. Kodo was washing sweet potatoes in a wooden bucket, and he started to hum. Just a few notes of a farmer's song, nothing elaborate. Then he stopped suddenly, as if remembering he was in a monastery where silence was valued. Sorry, sensei, he whispered. Eizan was about to say something about the importance of mindful silence when he noticed that Kodo was smiling at the sweet potatoes. Actually smiling, as if he had never seen sweet potatoes before. As if they were the most interesting things in the world. Why are you smiling? Eizan asked, despite himself. Kodo looked up, too surprised by the question. I don't know. Sensei. I was just noticing how some of them are shaped like little fat Buddhas. This one looks like it's bowing. He held up a sweet potato with a curved middle section. And this one has eyes. He pointed to two small indentations. Eizan looked at the sweet potatoes he had prepared and chopped hundreds of times. He had given talks about vegetables as practice objects. He had explained how Master Dogen wrote that cooking vegetables is the same as studying scripture. But he could not remember the last time he had actually seen a sweet potato. He had seen practice opportunities. He had seen teaching moments. He had seen objects for mindfulness cultivation. But he had not seen sweet potatoes. You should focus on your task, Eizan said quietly, turning back to his cutting board. But something in his chest had tightened. That evening, after the final meditation period, Eizan walked alone through the monastery's small garden. It was a cold night, clear and still. The stars were out, and there, rising over the eastern mountains, was the full moon. Eizan stopped on the path and looked up at it. He tried to just see it. Just this one time, see it without knowing anything about it. But immediately, his mind began, round like the Dharma wheel, symbolizing the fullness of practice. The 1,000-petaled lotus of, he closed his eyes, took a breath, opened them again. The moon was still there, but so were all his thoughts about the moon, crowding around it like clouds. He heard footsteps on the gravel path behind him. It was Kodo, the new student, walking slowly with his hands folded in his sleeves. Beautiful moon, tonight, sensei, Kodo said, coming to stand beside him. Do you know what the moon represents in Zen teaching? Eizan asked. He couldn't help himself. Kodo looked up at the moon for a long moment. I don't know, sensei, but it's very bright tonight. I've never seen it quite this color before. Sort of like the inside of a white chrysanthemum, but bigger. And it makes that pine tree over there look blue instead of black. Eizan looked at the pine tree. The moonlight did make it look blue. He had never noticed that before. In 23 years of living in this monastery, walking past that tree perhaps 10,000 times, he had never once noticed that the moon could make a black pine tree look blue. You see things, Eizan said quietly, It wasn't a question. I don't know very much yet, Kodo admitted. So I just look. That night, Azan could not sleep. He lay on his mat in his small room and stared at the ceiling. He felt something heavy pressing on his chest, but it wasn't illness. It was the weight of 23 years of knowing things. He had worked so hard to become knowledgeable, to understand, to be wise, and somewhere along the way, he had stopped being able to see a sweet potato shaped like a little fat Buddha, or a pine tree turned blue by moonlight, or anything at all as it actually was. The next morning, Azan went to the abbot's chambers. The abbot was an old man, nearly 80, with a face like weathered pine bark and eyes that missed nothing. "Sensei," Azan said, bowing low, "I need to learn how to see again." The abbot looked at him for a long time. Then, very slowly, he smiled. "You've been practicing for 23 years, the abbot said. "That's a long time to fill your cup. Now perhaps it's time to empty it." "I don't know how," Azan said, and was surprised to find his voice shaking slightly. "I've spent so long learning. I don't know how to unknow things." "You don't need to unknow them," the abbot said gently. "You just need to see what's in front of you before you name it, before you explain it, before you understand it." He paused. "Tell me, when you were a child, before you came to the monastery, did you know the names of all the trees?" "No, Sensei." "But could you see them?" Athan was quiet. He remembered being 7 years old, running through the forest near his village. He remembered a particular tree with bark that peeled like paper. He had no idea what kind of tree it was, but he remembered pressing his palms against its trunk and feeling how cool and smooth it was. He remembered the way the light came through its leaves in the afternoon, making green shadows on the forest floor. He had seen that tree completely, every detail, because he didn't know what it was. "I could see them," Azan whispered. "Your knowledge hasn't ruined you," the abbot said, "but it has become a veil. You're looking at the world through what you know, instead of seeing what's actually there." He reached over and picked up his tea bowl, holding it between them. "When you look at this bowl, what do you see?" I see the form that demonstrates emptiness. I see the impermanence of all things. No, the abbot said softly. "You see words. You see concepts. Look again. What do you actually see?" Azan looked. He tried to see, but all he could see were ideas about the bowl. The abbot set the bowl down. "Go work in the kitchen again tomorrow. Watch the new student. Learn from him. He still has beginner's eyes." For the next month, Azan worked alongside Kodo every morning in the kitchen. At first, it felt humiliating, a senior monk learning from a barely literate novice. But Azan had been given a task by his teacher, and he would follow it. He watched Kodo notice things. The way carrots smelled different from each other. The way water made different sounds depending on how full the bucket was. The way the morning light came through the kitchen window at a slightly different angle each day. "Don't you want to know why?" Azan asked one morning, unable to contain himself. Kodo had been staring at a jar of miso for several minutes, turning it slowly in the light. "Why what, Sensei? Why the light changes angle? Why water makes different sounds? Why things are the way they are?" Kodo thought about this. "I suppose I will want to know someday," he said. "But right now I just want to see them. There's so much to see. If I start asking why about everything, I might miss what's actually there." Something in Azan's chest cracked open a little. He started trying it, just seeing, just one thing at a time, before the knowing rushed in. The spoon in his hand, just feeling its weight before remembering it, was a meditation object. The sound of the bell, just hearing it before recognizing it as a call to practice. The face of the monk across from him in the meditation hall, just seeing this particular face before categorizing it as another practitioner on the path. It was harder than 23 years of rigorous practice. It was harder than memorizing sutras or sitting through pain or any of the difficult things he had done. This was the hardest thing, to see what was in front of him without immediately wrapping it in knowledge. But slowly, very slowly, things began to appear again. One evening, Azan was walking to the meditation hall when he stopped suddenly in the middle of the path. There was a spider's web stretched between two bamboo stalks, and the setting sun was caught in it. The web was glowing. Each thread was visible, strung with tiny drops of dew that looked like glass beads, and the whole thing was shimmering with orange and pink and gold light. Azan stood very still and looked at it. He didn't think about impermanence. He didn't think about interconnection or the web of Dharma or any of the teachings. He just looked. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He felt tears on his face and was surprised by them. When had he last cried from beauty? He couldn't remember. Maybe when he was a child. That night, the moon rose again. Azan went out to the garden. Kodo was there too, sitting on a stone bench, looking up. "Want to sit with me, Sensei?" Kodo asked. Azan sat down beside him. They looked up at the moon together. And this time, Azan saw it. Not the concept of moon. Not the symbol of enlightenment. Not the finger or the thing being pointed at. Just this moon. This one moon on this one night. The way its light was so bright, it hurt a little to look at directly. The way it made the entire sky around it a deeper black. The way it seemed to be moving, even though it wasn't. An optical illusion created by thin clouds passing in front of it. "I can see it now," Azan said quietly. "See what?" "Sensei, the moon." Kodo looked at him, confused. "But it's right there. How could you not see it before?" Azan smiled. "I was seeing my knowledge of it instead." They sat in comfortable silence. After a while, Kodo said, "Sensei, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Now that you can see the moon again, does that mean you forget everything you learned?" "No," Azan said. "It means I learn when to let the knowledge rest. I learn to see first and think second. I learn that understanding can wait. The moon doesn't need me to understand it. It just needs me to see it." Kodo nodded slowly. "I think I'll have to remember that. For when I learn to read, so I don't forget how to see." "Yes," Azan said. "Yes, exactly that." The moon rose higher. Somewhere in the forest, a nightjar called out its strange song. The air smelled like pine and cold earth, and Azan sat there and saw it all, freshly, as if he had just been born into this world and everything in it was new. There is something unbearably tender about realizing you've forgotten how to see. Not see in the sense of vision. Your eyes work fine. You can identify objects, navigate through rooms, read the expressions on people's faces. But somewhere along the way, between learning and becoming skilled, between studying and knowing, you stopped seeing things as they actually are. You started seeing your thoughts about things instead. This is what expertise does if we're not careful. It gives us frameworks and categories and explanations, and these become filters that go over our actual experience. We see difficult person instead of this particular human in front of us who is hurting right now. We see Monday morning instead of this morning, this light, this temperature of air. We see same old routine instead of this moment that has never existed before and will never exist again. The expertise is not the problem. Azan's 23 years of study had given him real understanding, real wisdom. The problem was that he could no longer access the world without that understanding, processing everything first. He couldn't see a sweet potato without his knowledge about vegetables and practice stepping in front of the actual sweet potato. Have you felt this? Have you noticed yourself explaining something to yourself before you've really experienced it? Maybe you see a sunset and immediately think, beautiful sunset. And that label wraps around the experience so quickly that you never actually see the specific colors in this specific sky. Maybe someone tells you they're having a hard time and you've already categorized what kind of hard time it is before you've really listened to what they're saying. It's exhausting. Being an expert on your own life. Knowing in advance how the argument will go. Knowing what Tuesday will feel like. Knowing that this person always does that thing and that situation will definitely go this way. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Not because expertise is bad, but because expertise naturally narrows. It says, I've seen this before. I know what this is. I understand. And all of those statements might be true, but they can keep you from seeing what's actually happening right now. This moment is new. Your partner sitting across from you is not who they were yesterday. Your child is not the same child who threw a tantrum last week. The anxiety you're feeling tonight is not identical to yesterday's anxiety, even if it feels familiar. Everything is fresh. Everything is arriving for the first time. But we miss it because we're so busy recognizing the practice is gentler than you might think. You don't have to forget everything you know. You don't have to pretend you're someone who doesn't have experience or skills or understanding. You just have to see things before you name them. Experience them before you explain them. Look at your hands right now, just for a moment. Actually look, as if you've never seen hands before. Notice the specific curve of your fingers, the color variations in your skin, the way light might be hitting one part differently than another, the temperature you can feel where they're resting. Did you see them, even for just a second? That's beginner's mind. That's seeing before knowing. You can do this with anything. You're breathing right now. Don't think about breathing technique or pranayama or any of that. Just feel air moving in and air moving out. The specific temperature of it. The specific sensation in your nostrils or throat or chest. This breath, not the concept of breath. The ceiling above you. The actual ceiling, not ceiling I've seen 1,000 times. What color is it exactly? Where is the light source? Are there any subtle variations in texture? The feeling in your body right now. Not tiredness or restlessness or any category. The actual sensations. Where do you feel heaviness? Where do you feel openness? What's the quality of the sensation in your shoulders? Your jaw? Behind your eyes? Fresh eyes don't require you to give up what you've learned. They just require you to delay it. To see first. To feel first. To experience first. And then, if understanding wants to come, it can come. But it doesn't get to go first anymore. This is especially important with difficult things. When anxiety arrives, You might immediately recognize it as anxiety and then run through everything you know about anxiety and why it's here and what it means. But what if you just felt it first? Just the actual sensations, the tightness, the racing, the churning, before the story about what it means. When someone criticizes you, you might immediately defend or explain or shut down. But what if you just heard the words first? Just let them land without your expertise about criticism jumping in. You might discover something you needed to hear. You might notice they're scared, not angry. You might see something fresh that your expert mind would have filtered out. Beginner's mind is not naive. It's not pretending you don't know things. It's setting aside what you know long enough to see what's actually here. Let your shoulders drop a little. Let your jaw relax. You don't have to know everything right now. You don't have to understand. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can just see, just this moment, just what's actually here. The moon is still the moon, whether you understand what it symbolizes or not. The sweet potato is still the sweet potato. Your life is still your life, unfolding in ways you couldn't predict, showing you things you've never seen before, even when you think you've seen it all. Feel your breath moving, gentle and steady. No need to change it. No need to improve it. Just breathing, just as you are. And if your eyes want to close, let them. If sleep wants to arrive, there's no need to resist. This is all here for you when you need it, but rest is welcome whenever it calls. Your body can settle deeper now. Feel the mattress beneath you. Feel the pillow supporting your head. Everything here is made to hold you. And as that tightness around, knowing everything begins to soften just slightly, we travel now to another mountain, another time, where a different practitioner learned about the freedom found in empty hands and innocent eyes. In the mountains of 16th century Korea, there lived a Seon nun named Myo Young, who was desperately trying to understand everything. She had entered the monastery at Gumsan when she was 19, fleeing an arranged marriage to a merchant's son. Her father had been furious, but her mother had slipped her a small cloth bag of coins and whispered, "Go where your heart takes you." The temple accepted her not because they sought more nuns, but because the abbess, an elderly woman named Cheon-wol, saw something in Myo Young's eyes. A hunger, a reaching. This one will either find peace or drive herself mad searching for it. Cheon-wol had said, "We'll see which happens first." For 7 years, Myo Young practiced with fierce determination. She rose before dawn. She memorized sutras. She sat zazen until her legs went numb and then sat longer. She studied with every teacher who would speak with her. She asked questions constantly. Why this? Why that? How does it work? What does it mean? The other nuns began to avoid her during meals. Her questions were exhausting. Why do we bow 3 times and not 2 or 4? She would ask. What is the exact difference between emptiness and nothingness? How can consciousness be both arising and ceasing if it's ultimately unborn? What did Master Jinul really mean when he said sudden enlightenment followed by gradual practice? Isn't that a contradiction? The older nuns would sigh and stare into their bowls of rice. Even the patient ones grew weary. One autumn morning, Abbess Cheon-wol called Myo Young to her chambers. The abbess was 83 years old now, bent like a pine tree shaped by wind, her face deeply lined, but her eyes still sharp as winter stars. "Sit," she said. Myo Young sat, arranging her robes carefully, her back perfectly straight. She had read that posture reflected inner alignment, so she was always conscious of her positioning. "How long have you been with us?" Cheon-wol asked. 7 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Myo Hyang said precisely. And in all that time, what have you learned? Myo Hyang's face brightened. This was a question she could answer. I've learned the Heart Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. I've studied Master Jinul's teachings on Huadu practice. I've memorized 143 gongans. I understand the principles of sudden versus gradual enlightenment. I know the history of our lineage back through. Keon Vul held up one hand. Myo Hyang stopped mid-sentence. What do you know about this? The abbess asked. She pointed to a small stone sitting on the window ledge. Just an ordinary grey stone, round and smooth. Myo Hyang looked at it. It's a river stone, probably from the stream below the temple. The smoothness suggests it's been worn by water over many years, perhaps centuries. It's made of granite or no, Cheonwul said softly. I didn't ask what you can deduce or explain. I asked what you know about it. Myo Hyang opened her mouth, closed it. I just told you what I know. You told me what you think. Keonvul said. You told me your explanations, your theories, your categories. She picked up the stone and held it in her weathered palm. But do you actually know this stone? Have you ever really met it? I don't understand, Myo Hyang said, feeling a familiar frustration rising in her chest. This was happening more and more lately. She would ask a clear question and receive an unclear answer. She wanted precision, clarity, systematic understanding. Instead, she kept encountering these cryptic responses that made her feel like she was reaching for something that kept moving away. I know, Keonwul said. You don't understand. That's the first honest thing you've said all morning. She set the stone back on the ledge. I'm going to give you a Huadu to practice with. Just one. You'll work with this and nothing else. No more sutras. No more studying. No more collecting knowledge like a merchant hoards rice. Myo Hyang's hands tightened in her lap. Stop studying? But study was how she was going to understand. How she was going to figure it all out. Your Huadu is this, Keonvul said. What is this? Myo Hyang waited for more. That's all? That's all. What is this? The abbess looked at her steadily. Not what do I think about this. Not what category does this belong to. Not how do I explain this. Just, what is this? But sensei, I don't understand what you're asking me to. Exactly. Keonvul said. Keep that not understanding. Live in it. Ask the question without needing an answer. What is this? What is this moment? What is this breathing? What is this person sitting across from me? Don't know. Just ask. Myo Hyang left the abbess's chambers feeling completely lost. She was used to assignments she could complete. Learn this text. Practice this technique. Memorize these teachings. But this was different. This was like being asked to carry water in a basket. For the first few days, she tried to approach it intellectually. When she looked at her breakfast bowl, she would think, what is this? Well, it's a ceramic bowl, made by human hands, designed to hold food, representing the impermanence of... And then she would catch herself. That wasn't the practice. That was just more thinking. She tried again. What is this? She would ask, looking at the bowl, and then her mind would answer. A bowl, obviously. and she would feel frustrated because the answer felt too simple and too complicated at the same time. One morning, she was sweeping the courtyard. It was monotonous work, and her mind wandered to the various questions she had been collecting. She wanted to ask Teacher Sonam about a passage in the sutras that seemed contradictory. She wanted to understand why the meditation schedule was arranged this way and not another way. She wanted to know. And then she remembered her Huadu. "What is this?" she whispered, looking at the broom in her hands. The question just sat there. She didn't know what the broom was. Not really. She knew the word broom. She knew its function. She knew what it was made of. But she didn't know what it actually was, in itself. Beyond all those descriptions, it felt like standing at the edge of something vast and dark and unknowable. She didn't like the feeling. Not at all. Mio Yang had always been good at finding answers. When she was a child, she had been the one who could solve her father's arithmetic problems faster than her brothers. She had taught herself to read by asking the village scribe to explain each character until she had memorized hundreds of them. Understanding things made her feel safe, made her feel competent, made her feel like she had some control over a world that often seemed chaotic and frightening. But this practice was asking her to live in not knowing, to ask a question and not try to answer it, to meet each moment without reaching for explanation. It terrified her. One afternoon, she was working in the kitchen garden, pulling weeds from between the radish plants. Another nun, Behua, was working nearby. Behua was older, perhaps 40, and she rarely spoke. She had been at the temple for over 20 years. "Sister," Mio Hyang said, unable to contain herself. "Can I ask you something?" Behua looked up, her hands still in the soil. "You just did." "I mean..." "The abbess gave me the Huadu. What is this? And I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with it." "Have you worked with this Huadu?" Behua pulled another weed, shaking the dirt from its roots. "What do you want me to tell you? How it works? What the method is? What I should be experiencing?" Behua said. She sat back on her heels and looked at Mio Yang with something that might have been compassion. "You want to know how to not know?" "Yes. Exactly." Behua smiled. "Sister, you're trying to make a skill out of mystery. You want a technique for having no technique. Instructions for how to have no instructions. I just want to do it correctly," Mio Hyang said, hearing the frustration in her own voice. "What is this?" Behua asked suddenly, holding up a radish she had just pulled from the earth. Mio Hyang looked at it. Her mind immediately began cataloguing: radish, vegetable, white root, muddy, fresh, probably will be used in tonight's soup. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "Now you're practicing," Behua said softly. She set the radish down and returned to her weeding. That night, Mio Yang couldn't sleep. She lay on her thin mat in the small room she shared with 2 other nuns, staring at the darkness. The not knowing felt like drowning, like everything she had built was being pulled apart. If she couldn't understand things, who was she? If she couldn't figure things out, what was her value? She got up quietly and walked out into the courtyard. The night was cold and clear. Stars filled the sky like scattered rice grains. "What is this?" she whispered to the stars. And for just a moment, instead of reaching for an answer, she simply stood there, not knowing. The question hung in the space between her and the night sky. There was no explanation rushing in, no category, no understanding, just this moment of asking and not knowing. It felt like falling. It felt like freedom. Her eyes filled with tears, and she didn't know why. The abbess appeared beside her like a shadow. Mio Young hadn't heard her approach. "You're beginning to taste it," Cheon-wol said quietly. "Taste what?" Mio Hyung asked, wiping her eyes. "The freedom of not needing to understand, the spaciousness of not knowing." "But sensei, I feel so lost. Like I'm giving up something important. All my life, I've tried to understand things, to figure them out, to be smart. And now you're discovering that all that understanding was a kind of armor," Cheon-wol said. "Protection against the mystery of being alive. But armor is heavy, child. And it keeps you separate from what you're trying to protect yourself from experiencing." They stood together in silence. The cold air moved across Mio Yang's face. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The stars continued their slow wheel across the sky. "The Huadu is not a puzzle to solve," Cheon-wol said. "It's a question that breaks the question-asking mind. You ask, 'What is this?' Not to get an answer, but to live in the asking. To be intimate with not knowing." "I don't know how to be intimate with not knowing," Mio Young admitted. "I know you don't," the abbess said, and there was kindness in her voice. "That's why we practice. You've spent 7 years trying to fill yourself with knowledge. Now we'll see if you can spend the next 7 learning to empty yourself. Learning to meet each moment fresh, without all your explanations standing between you and what's actually here." Over the following months, something in Mio Young began to shift. Not quickly, not dramatically, but gradually, the way dawn changes the darkness. She still caught herself trying to answer the Huadu, trying to figure it out, trying to understand. But more and more, she also caught herself in the act of catching herself. She saw her own habitual reaching for explanation. And sometimes, just sometimes, she could let that reaching go. "What is this?" she would ask, looking at her hands washing the rice. And instead of thinking hands, rice, water, bowl, she would just be there. Hands, rice, water, bowl. The actual sensations, the actual moment, without the layer of knowing wrapping around it. One spring morning, nearly a year after receiving the Huadu, Mio Young was sitting in meditation. The windows were open and she could hear rain falling on the temple roof. She had been sitting for perhaps an hour when the question arose naturally, "What is this?" And this time, no answer came. No explanation. No understanding. Just the question, alive and open, and the sound of rain, and the sensation of breathing, and the feeling of being alive without needing to know what that meant. She sat there for a long time in that not knowing, and it wasn't frightening anymore. It was vast. It was alive. It was full of possibility. When the meditation period ended and the bell rang, she found she was smiling. Later that day, she saw Abbess Cheon-wol in the courtyard. The old woman looked at her and then nodded slowly, as if seeing something she had been waiting to see. "Sensei," Mio Hyang said, "I still don't understand." "Good," Cheon-wol said. "Keep not understanding. There's more wisdom in your honest not knowing than in all the explanations you've memorized." "But will I ever understand?" The abbess laughed. "That's your mind, trying to turn not knowing into just another thing to achieve, to acquire. No, child, this is different. This is learning to live without that kind of understanding. This is learning to be alive without armor. It's uncomfortable, Muyao admitted. Yes, Kionvol said. But notice, is it as uncomfortable as spending your life trying to understand everything, trying to control everything with your explanations, always reaching, never arriving? Muyao was quiet. The abbess was right. All those years of seeking understanding, she had never felt satisfied. There was always one more question, one more thing to figure out, one more mystery to solve. The not knowing was uncomfortable, but it was also restful, like finally setting down a heavy pack she had been carrying for miles. "What is this?" she whispered, looking at a small bird that had landed on the courtyard wall. The bird hopped twice, tilted its head, flew away, and Muyao didn't know what it was. Not really, but she had seen it. Completely. Without her knowledge standing in the way. Your mind is so tired from knowing everything. Not knowing in the sense of having information. You know plenty. Maybe too much. But knowing in the sense of always having to understand. Always having to explain. Always having to make sense of every single thing that happens to you. When something difficult occurs, you immediately start asking why. When someone behaves strangely, you need to figure out what it means. When you feel anxious or sad or restless, you reach for an explanation. What caused this? What does it signify? How do I fix it? How do I understand it so I can control it? It's exhausting, isn't it? This constant need to know. Muyao journey is so familiar. She believed that if she could just understand enough, study enough, figure enough things out, she would finally feel at peace. But the understanding never brought peace. It brought more questions, more need for explanation, more distance between her and the actual living moments of her life. This is what happens when we mistake knowing about things for actually experiencing them. We see a sunset and immediately think beautiful sunset, and that label becomes a filter between us and the actual colors in the actual sky. Someone says something that hurts our feelings, and we immediately construct a story about why they said it and what it means about us and what it means about them. And we never actually feel the simple hurt beneath all those explanations. The Huadu practice she was given, "What is this?" is an invitation to experience rather than explain. To meet things directly rather than through the filter of our knowledge. What is this sadness you're feeling right now? Not the story about why you're sad. Not the analysis of what triggered it or what it means or whether it's justified. But the actual felt experience of sadness. The heaviness in your chest. The tightness in your throat. The specific quality of this sadness, right now, before you wrap it in explanations. What is this restlessness that keeps you awake? You have so many theories about it. Stress from work. Worry about the future. Caffeine too late in the day. Unresolved trauma. All of those might be true. But underneath all those explanations, what is this actual experience? These sensations in your body? This quality of energy? This particular flavor of being unable to rest? Can you touch it without knowing what it is? This is terrifying for most of us. Knowing things makes us feel safe. If I can explain why I'm anxious, I feel like I have some control over it. If I can understand why that person behaved that way, I feel less vulnerable to it happening again. If I can figure out what's wrong with me, I can fix it. But what if that need to understand is actually keeping you at a distance from your own life? What if the constant explaining is a way of avoiding the rawness of simply being alive? Not knowing, not understanding, just experiencing moment after moment as it arrives. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. When you think you already know what something is, you stop actually seeing it. You see your concept of it instead. You already know what your partner's going to say, so you stop actually listening. You already know how your morning routine feels, so you stop actually experiencing it. You already know what your anxiety is about, so you stop actually feeling it and being curious about it. But what if you didn't know? What if each moment could be met with fresh eyes, with genuine curiosity, with the kind of openness that comes from not already having it figured out? Try this, just for a moment. Feel your breathing. Not by analyzing it or improving it or understanding what kind of breathing it is. Just feel it. The air moving in, the air moving out. The sensation in your nostrils or your throat or your chest. What is this? Don't answer. Just feel. Notice how quickly your mind wants to jump in with answers. It's breathing. It's oxygen exchange. It's a meditative practice. Can you stay with the question without reaching for those answers? Can you simply be present with the mystery of breath moving through you? This is beginner's mind. This is the spaciousness of not knowing. This is meeting your life directly instead of through the filter of all your explanations. And it's not about becoming naive or stupid. Myo Yang didn't lose her intelligence or her ability to think. She learned when to let that thinking rest. She learned to experience first and understand second. To feel first and explain second. To simply be with things before rushing to know what they are. You can do this with anything. Your hands right now. What are they? Not the biological explanation. Not the functional description. Just these hands. This warmth. This weight. This aliveness. Let them be mysterious. Let them be unknown. The sound you're hearing right now. What is it? Before you name it. Before you categorize it. What is this sound? Can you just hear it without needing to know what it is? This is especially powerful with difficult emotions. When anxiety arrives, instead of immediately going to, "I'm anxious because," or "this anxiety means," try asking, "What is this?" Feel the actual sensations, the tightness, the racing, the churning. Before you know what it is, can you simply be with it? You might discover that the emotion itself is less frightening than your thoughts about it. You might find that you can be with the raw experience of fear or sadness or anger without needing to understand it or fix it or make it go away. Let your shoulders soften now. Let your jaw unclench. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. You can live in the question. You can rest in the mystery. Feel the pillow beneath your head. You don't need to understand the pillow. You just need to feel it supporting you. Feel the blanket over you. Not thinking about it. Just feeling it. Just being held. What is this moment? You don't know. And that's perfectly fine. You can rest in not knowing. You can breathe in the mystery of being alive. You can let go of the exhausting need to understand everything. Just this breath. Just this moment. Just this aliveness that doesn't need explaining. And as that tight grip on needing to know loosens, just slightly, feel yourself settling deeper into rest. Your breathing continues, gentle and effortless. No understanding required. No explanation needed. Just breathing, just being, Just this. If thoughts arrive about things you need to figure out tomorrow, let them drift like clouds. They can wait. Right now, you don't need to know anything. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress. Heavy and held. Gravity doing its work without your help. And as the mind discovers this small freedom of not knowing, we travel now to another place, another seeker, learning about the fresh vision that comes when we stop being so certain about what we're seeing. In the 9th century, in the mountains west of Hongzhou, there lived a Qi and scholar named Wen Xiu who had memorized every answer. He had not come to Master Huangbo's monastery to learn. He had come to demonstrate. At 32 years old, Wen Xiu had spent 18 years studying Buddhist texts. He could quote from the Lankavatara Sutra without hesitation. He knew the Diamond Sutra by heart. He had read every commentary on the Platform Sutra that existed. He had traveled to 3 different monasteries, studied with 7 teachers, and accumulated wisdom the way a merchant accumulates copper coins. When he arrived at the mountain monastery, the monks were working in the tea fields. It was spring, and new leaves needed picking. Master Huangbo was there too, an enormous man, they said. He was 7 feet tall, working alongside the others, his robes tied up, his large hands moving quickly through the bushes. Wen Xiu approached and bowed formally. "Master, I have come to study the Dharma." Huangbo glanced at him and continued picking tea leaves. "Can you pick tea? I can discuss the nature of work as practice," Wen Xiu said. "I can explain how the 6th patriarch taught that Buddha nature is found in ordinary activities." "I can. That's not what I asked," Huangbo said. "Can you pick tea?" Wen Xiu felt a flash of irritation. "Yes, Master. Anyone can pick tea leaves." "Good. Start there." Huangbo pointed to a section of bushes. For the rest of that day, Wen Xiu picked tea. His back began to ache. His fingers became stained and sticky. The other monks worked in silence, but Wen Xiu's mind was loud with explanations of what was happening. "This is mindfulness practice," he told himself. "This is the union of meditation and action. This is what Master Baizhang meant when he said, 'A day without work is a day without eating.'" Everything had an explanation. Everything fit into his understanding. That evening, after the work was done and the meditation hall had emptied, Wen Xiu approached Master Huangbo with a question he had been preparing. "Master, in the Lankavatara Sutra, it says that all things are manifestations of mind. But the Madhyamaka teachings emphasize emptiness. How do we reconcile mind only with emptiness?" Huangbo looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "Why do you think you need to reconcile them? Because they seem contradictory." Wen Xiu said he had a whole dissertation prepared on this topic. He had studied it extensively. "Who told you reality can't be contradictory?" Wen Xiu opened his mouth, closed it. Every teacher he had studied with had worked to resolve contradictions, to show how apparent conflicts in the teachings were actually harmonious. The teachings must be consistent. Wen Xiu finally said, "Otherwise, how do we know what's true? You're looking for truth in consistency," Huangbo said. "But truth doesn't care about your need for things to make sense." Wen Xiu felt like he was trying to grab smoke. "But Master, surely the Buddha's teachings are coherent. Surely there's a systematic understanding." "When you were picking tea today," Huangbo interrupted, "did the tea care about your systematic understanding?" "No. But did your aching back need to be reconciled with Buddhist philosophy?" Wen Xiu was quiet. "You've spent 18 years," Huangbo said softly, building a very impressive prison, and you've decorated every wall with beautiful explanations. But you're still locked inside your own certainty. Over the following weeks, Wen Shu discovered that Master Huangbo would not engage with his questions the way other teachers had. When Wen Shu asked about the nature of Buddha mind, Huangbo would tell him to empty the slop buckets. When Wen Shu tried to discuss the stages of enlightenment, Huangbo would send him to chop vegetables. It was infuriating. One afternoon, Wen Shu was assigned to work with an old monk named Dao Wu, who had been at the monastery for 40 years. They were repairing a section of wall that had crumbled during the winter rains. "Brother Dao Wu," Wen Shu said, as they mixed mud and straw together, "how did you come to understand the Dharma? What texts did you study?" Dao Wu laughed, a sound like rocks tumbling down a hill. "I can't read," he said. "Never learned." Wen Shu stopped mixing. "But how did you learn the teachings?" "I listened to the master. I watched the way water moves. I noticed how my mind makes the same mistakes over and over." Dao Wu picked up a handful of mud and began pressing it into the wall. That was teaching enough. "But don't you want to understand the philosophy, the systematic approach to young brother?" Dao Wu said gently. "You keep using that word. Understand. As if understanding is something you can capture and keep in a box. But every time I think I understand something, the master shows me I was just seeing my own reflection." Wen Shu thought about this as they worked. His hands in the mud, the smell of wet earth, the simple repetitive motion of taking mud, pressing it into place, smoothing it, taking more mud. His mind kept trying to make it mean something. This is practice. This is teaching. This is... What if it was just mud? That night, unable to sleep, Wen Shu went to sit in the meditation hall. The darkness was complete. He could hear the sound of his own breathing and nothing else. "Can't sleep?" Master Huangbo's voice came from somewhere to his left. Wen Shu hadn't realized the master was there. "Master, I dian. I'm confused." "Good. I came here with so much knowledge," Wen Shu said. "I thought I understood the teachings. But now I feel like I don't know anything. Even better." Wen Shu heard the smile in Huangbo's voice, which made him feel both frustrated and oddly hopeful. "Is there any value?" Wen Shu asked. "In all the years I spent studying, was it all wasted?" The darkness was quiet for a moment. Then Huangbo said, "The value wasn't in what you learned. It was in bringing you to this point where you realize learning isn't enough. You had to try understanding before you could discover what lies beyond understanding." "What lies beyond understanding?" "Stop asking questions you want answered," Huangbo said. "Start asking questions that have no answers. Start living in the question itself." "I don't know how to do that." "I know you don't. That's why you're here." Another month passed. Wen Shu stopped trying to impress the master with his knowledge. He stopped trying to get profound teachings. He just worked. Picked tea, howled water, sat in meditation, swept the courtyard, and slowly, very slowly, he began to notice something. His mind had patterns. The same patterns, repeating. Every time something happened that he didn't understand, his mind would immediately try to categorize it, explain it, fit it into his existing knowledge. It was like a reflex. Something unknown would arise, and his mind would scramble to make it known. He couldn't meet anything fresh. Everything had to pass through his filter of explanation first. One morning, he was walking through the monastery's bamboo grove when he saw Master Huangbo standing very still, looking at something on the ground. Wen Xiu approached quietly. There was a small yellow flower growing between two stones. Just one flower. Huangbo was looking at it with complete attention. Wen Xiu stood there, and his mind immediately began its categorizing. This is a teaching moment. The master is demonstrating present moment awareness. This flower represents Buddha nature in its simplicity. This is like the story of the Buddha holding up a flower. And then he caught himself, caught his mind doing its thing, wrapping everything in explanation before actually seeing it. He looked at the flower again, just looked, without naming it as a teaching, without making it mean something, without understanding what it represented. Just this yellow flower, these specific petals, this particular way the light touched it. The small beetle crawling across one petal, the slight movement in the breeze. His eyes filled with tears. He didn't know why. Wen Xiu, Huangbo said quietly, still looking at the flower. What is this? And for the first time since arriving at the monastery, Wen Xiu didn't answer. The question just hung there. He didn't know what it was. Not really. He knew the word flower. He knew facts about flowers. But he didn't know what this was. I don't know, Master. Keep not knowing, Huangbo said. That afternoon, Wen Xiu was preparing rice for the evening meal. Another monk, Ling Zhao, was working beside him, washing vegetables. Ling Zhao, Wen Xiu said, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When did you stop needing to understand everything?" Ling Zhao was quiet for a moment, her hands continuing to wash the radishes. "I'm not sure I have stopped," she said, finally. "But I notice it now. I notice when my mind is reaching for certainty instead of being with what's actually here. That's different than before." "How is it different?" "Before, I thought the reaching was me. The need to know was just who I was. But now I see it's just a habit, a pattern my mind runs, and sometimes I can let it run without believing it. Sometimes I can just be here with not knowing." Wen Xiu nodded slowly. "It's uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable." Ling Zhao agreed. "But you know what's more uncomfortable? Pretending to know when you don't. Building your whole life on certainties that aren't actually certain. That's exhausting." "Yes," Wen Xiu whispered. "Yes, it is." That night, Master Huangbo gave a talk in the meditation hall. It was rare for him to give formal teachings, so the hall was crowded with monks and nuns sitting shoulder to shoulder. "Mind is Buddha," Huangbo said. "Buddha is mind. These aren't different things. But the moment you try to understand this, the moment you try to grasp it with your discriminating mind, you've already lost it. You can't capture truth. You can only stop fighting against it." Someone asked, "Master, how do we stop fighting?" "By noticing you're fighting," Huangbo said. "By seeing how your mind constantly reaches for something to hold on to. Some explanation, some understanding, some certainty. Watch that reaching. Don't judge it. Don't try to stop it. Just see it clearly. See how exhausting it is." Wen Xiu felt something crack open in his chest. "Your knowledge isn't the problem," Huangbo continued. "The problem is using knowledge as armor, building certainty as protection against the rawness of not knowing. You think if you can just understand enough, explain enough, categorize enough, you'll finally feel safe. But safety doesn't come from knowing. It comes from being able to rest in not knowing. After the talk, Wen Shu walked out into the courtyard. The night was cool and filled with stars. He looked up at them and didn't try to remember their names or their meanings in Buddhist cosmology. He just looked. He didn't know what they were, but they were beautiful. A few months later, a new scholar arrived at the monastery. Young, confident, carrying scrolls filled with philosophical questions. Wen Shu watched him approach Master Huangbo with a complex question about the nature of original enlightenment. Huangbo listened patiently. Then he said, "Can you carry water?" The young scholar looked confused. "I suppose so, but I came here to discuss. Start there," Huangbo said, pointing to the well. Wen Shu smiled. He understood now, or rather, he understood that understanding wasn't the point. The point was to meet each moment without his certainty standing in the way. To see things fresh. To live in the question instead of rushing to the answer. He still had all his knowledge. All those years of study. But now it rested lightly. Like a coat he could put on or take off, rather than armor welded to his skin. Someone asked him once, months later, "Did Master Huangbo teach you the Dharma?" Wen Shu thought about it. "He taught me how to pick tea," he said. "Everything else I had to unlearn." You know things. So many things. You've accumulated years of understanding, explanations, frameworks for making sense of the world. And it's exhausting, isn't it? This constant need to fit everything into what you already know. Something happens and your mind immediately reaches for an explanation. Why did that person say that? Your mind offers 5 theories. Why do you feel this way? Your mind provides a diagnosis. What does this event mean? Your mind delivers an interpretation. Neat and complete. And you think this knowing is helping you. You think understanding things keeps you safe. But what if your certainty is actually a wall between you and the richness of what's actually happening? Wen Shu's pattern is so familiar. He couldn't experience anything without his knowledge processing it first. Everything had to be understood, categorized, fit into his existing framework. He couldn't just see a flower. He had to know what the flower meant. He couldn't just feel his back aching. He had to understand it as a teaching. Do you do this? Do you notice how your mind wraps everything in explanation before you've really experienced it? Someone criticizes you, and before you've even felt the hurt, your mind is explaining why they said it, what it means about you, what it means about them. Where this fits in the pattern of your relationships, the actual moment of being criticized gets lost beneath all that knowing. Or you're anxious, and immediately your mind offers theories. It's because of that thing that happened last week. It's your childhood. It's your brain chemistry. It's lack of sleep. And all of those might be true, but the explaining keeps you from actually being with the anxiety itself. Feeling it. Breathing with it. Meeting it directly. The pattern is this. Something unknown arises, and your mind rushes to make it known. Because known feels safer than unknown. Understood feels more controllable than mysterious. Explained feels less threatening than just being with what's actually here. But notice, does all that understanding actually make you feel safer, or does it just give you the illusion of safety while keeping you perpetually busy in your head? Managing and analyzing and explaining? What would it be like to meet something without needing to understand it first? Your partner says something that confuses you. Can you just be confused? Can you sit in the confusion without your mind rushing to resolve it? To figure out what they really meant? To fit it into your understanding of them? You wake up feeling off. Can you just feel off? without immediately diagnosing it, explaining it, making it mean something. Can you let it be mysterious? This isn't about becoming stupid or ignorant. Wen Shu didn't lose his knowledge when he started unlearning. He just stopped letting his knowledge run his whole experience. He stopped using understanding as armor. Because that's what we're really doing, isn't it? We think we're seeking truth through understanding, but often we're seeking safety through certainty. We're trying to control life by explaining it, trying to protect ourselves from the vulnerability of not knowing by building elaborate systems of knowledge. But life doesn't care about our systems. Reality doesn't need our permission to be contradictory, confusing, impossible to fully understand. The flower doesn't need to mean anything. Your anxiety doesn't need to be fully explained to be felt. The person in front of you doesn't need to be completely understood to be met with presence. Feel your breathing right now. Don't understand it. Don't think about why it's this rhythm or what it means. Just feel air moving in and air moving out. That's enough. That's complete. Look at whatever is in front of you. Maybe it's darkness. Maybe it's ceiling. Maybe it's the subtle light from outside. Can you see it without naming it as darkness or ceiling or light? Can you just see color, shape, quality, without the layer of knowing wrapping around it? This is the invitation. Not to stop thinking. Not to become blank or empty-headed. But to notice the pattern. Notice how automatically your mind reaches for explanation. Notice how it wraps everything in certainty before you've really experienced it. And sometimes, just sometimes, let that reaching happen without following it. Let your mind offer its explanations, and then come back to the direct experience. The actual sensation, the actual seeing, the actual moment, before it gets processed through your understanding. Let your jaw relax. You don't have to know what's happening right now. You don't have to understand why you feel the way you feel. You don't have to figure out what it all means. You can just be here, breathing, feeling, present, without the weight of your certainty pressing down on every moment. The knowledge will still be there if you need it. But right now, for these few moments, you can rest in not knowing. You can meet this moment fresh, like you've never met a moment before. What is this? Don't answer. Just ask. Just be here with the question. Let it be alive and open. Let yourself not know. Feel the softness of not needing to understand. Feel how much space there is when certainty loosens its grip. Your breath continues, steady and reliable. You don't need to know why. You don't need to understand how. Just breathing, just as you are. Let your body settle deeper. The mattress holds you without explanation. The blanket covers you without meaning. Everything here is simple. Everything here just is. And as the mind learns to rest in mystery rather than clinging to certainty, we move now to another life, another seeker, discovering what becomes visible when the need to know finally relaxes its hold. In the mountains of eastern Tibet, in the year 1712, there lived a nun named Palmo who was searching for her own face. She had been at Samye Monastery for 11 years, practicing with dedication that impressed even the older monastics. She rose 2 hours before dawn to meditate. She performed 100,000 prostrations. She completed the preliminary practices twice. She studied philosophy. She memorized prayers. She attended every teaching, every transmission, every empowerment. The other nuns called her the diligent one. Her teacher, Lama Yeshe Drolma called her the Seeker. Palmo didn't know if that second title was a compliment or a warning. One cold morning, after the early meditation session, Lama Yeshe called Palmo to her small room. The Lama was 68 years old, tiny as a bird, with eyes that seemed to see through walls. "Sit," she said. Palmo sat, arranging her robes carefully, straightening her posture. "Relax," the Lama said. Palmo tried to relax while remaining properly respectful. "No," the Lama said, almost laughing. "Actually relax. You're holding yourself like you're about to be examined." Palmo let her shoulders drop slightly. "Tell me," Lama Yeshe said, "what are you looking for?" "I'm looking for realization," Palmo answered immediately. She had prepared for this question. "I'm practicing to recognize Rigpa, to see the nature of mind." "To, yes, yes." The Lama waved her hand. "I know the words. But what are you actually looking for?" Palmo hesitated. I want to understand, to experience what all the teachings are pointing to see what you see. And you think you haven't seen it yet?" "No, Lama. I haven't. I meditate and meditate, but nothing happens. No special experiences, no recognition. Just sitting there with my thoughts." Other practitioners describe these profound experiences, and I have nothing. Lama Yeshe was quiet for a long moment, looking at Palmo with an expression that might have been compassion or might have been something more complicated. "How long have you been searching?" 11 years here. "But really, since I was young. Maybe my whole life. That's a long time to be looking for something." "Yes, Lama. Has it occurred to you," the Lama said gently, "that you might be looking so hard you're missing what's already here?" Palmo felt a flash of frustration. This was the kind of cryptic statement that teachers made, and she never understood what it actually meant. "But Lama, the teachings say we must recognize Rigpa. We must see the nature of mind. How can I see it if I'm not looking?" "What is seeing right now?" Palmo blinked. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing this room. And what is that seeing made of? What is its nature?" Palmo tried to think. She knew the philosophical answers. Seeing is empty. Seeing is awareness itself. Seeing is... "You're thinking again," the Lama said. "I didn't ask what you know about seeing. I asked about the nature of what's actually happening right now. This seeing, happening right now." Palmo looked at the Lama. She tried to look at the looking itself, but as soon as she tried, it felt like she was looking for something other than what was already happening. "I don't know how to do what you're asking," she admitted. "I know," Lama Yeshe said, "because you think there's a special way to see, a special state you have to achieve. So you're always reaching for something other than what's already here." She leaned forward slightly. "Palmo, what if the searching itself is what's blocking you? What if Rigpa isn't something you find by looking, but something that becomes obvious when you stop looking away from it?" "But I'm not looking away from it. I'm looking for it." "Same thing," the Lama said. That conversation stayed with Palmo for days. She couldn't make sense of it. How could looking for something be the same as looking away from it? How could she stop searching when the whole point was to search for realization? She tried to meditate without searching. But as soon as she sat down, her mind would start reaching for stillness, reaching for clarity, reaching for some sign that she was doing it right. some experience that would confirm she was making progress. One afternoon, she was assigned to work in the monastery's vegetable garden with an older nun named Tsomo. Tsomo had been at the monastery for 40 years and rarely spoke. She just worked, slowly and steadily, her weathered hands moving through the soil with complete attention. They worked in silence for over an hour. Palmo was caught up in her thoughts, worrying about her practice, wondering if she was wasting her time, questioning whether she had the capacity for realization at all. "Sister Palmo," Tsomo said suddenly, "you're pulling up the vegetables, along with the weeds." Palmo looked down. It was true. She had been so lost in thought that she hadn't been paying attention to what her hands were doing. "I'm sorry," she said, quickly replanting what she'd pulled up. Tsomo chuckled. "You spend so much time in your head, you forget you have hands." "I was thinking about practice," Palmo said defensively. "I know," Tsomo said. "That's the problem." They worked in silence again. Palmo tried to pay attention this time. The feeling of soil on her fingers, the particular green of the vegetable plants versus the weeds, the weight of the sun on her back, the sound of a bird somewhere above them. It was just ordinary, nothing special. She was just there, pulling weeds, feeling the earth. "Tsomo," she asked after a while, "did you ever have an experience, a moment when you recognized?" Tsomo looked up, squinting in the sunlight. "Recognized what?" "The nature of mind." "Rigpa." "Oh." Tsomo went back to her weeding. "No special experience, if that's what you mean. Just one day, I realized I'd been looking for something I was never without. Like looking for my face while it's right here on the front of my head." Palmo felt something tighten in her chest. "But the teachings talk about sudden recognition, about the moment when the teachings are pointing at something," Tsomo said. "But the pointing isn't the thing. The words aren't the experience. You can read 100 descriptions of water, but that won't make you wet." "So what do I do?" Tsomo laughed. That same warm chuckle. "Stop asking that question. That's the doing. Always asking, 'What do I do?' as if there's some technique that will finally work. Some practice that will finally deliver the goods. But there are practices. The Lama gives us practices." "Yes," Tsomo agreed. "And practices are helpful. They prepare the ground. They clear away some of the busier distractions. But at some point, you have to stop practicing your way towards something and just be with what's actually here." She pulled up another weed and shook the soil from its roots. "Like right now. Pulling weeds. Are you here? Or are you thinking about being here? Are you seeking some special state? Or are you just here?" Palmo sat back on her heels. She looked at her hands, covered in dirt. She felt the solidity of the earth beneath her. She heard the wind moving through the prayer flags on the monastery's roof. She was here. But there was also this constant reaching, this constant sense that here wasn't enough, that this ordinary moment wasn't the right moment, that real practice was something else, somewhere else, some other state of being. "I don't know how to stop seeking," she whispered. "I know," Tsomo said kindly. "None of us do, at first. The seeking is a habit, a pattern. You seek because you think something's missing. And as long as you think something's missing, you'll keep looking for it, even if it was never missing to begin with." That evening, during meditation, Palmo noticed something. Every time she sat down to meditate, there was this underlying hope that this session would be the one. This session would finally bring the experience she was waiting for. And beneath the hope was a fear. Fear that she would never find what she was looking for. The seeking was made of hope and fear. She sat with that for a while, just noticing it, not trying to change it, not trying to make it go away, just seeing that this is what her mind was doing. Seeking, hoping, fearing. And while all that seeking was happening, breathing was also happening. Sitting was also happening. Awareness was already here, noticing the seeking, noticing the hoping, noticing the fearing. Something shifted, just slightly, like seeing from a slightly different angle. Over the next months, Palmo began to notice the pattern everywhere. She would be walking to the meditation hall, and her mind would be reaching ahead to the meditation session, hoping for progress. She would be eating, and her mind would be reviewing yesterday's practice, checking for signs of advancement. She would be listening to teachings, and her mind would be searching through the words for the secret key, the one instruction that would unlock everything. Always seeking, never here. And gradually, very gradually, she began to notice what was already present while all that seeking was happening. The actual experiencing, the actual awareness that was already aware. Not some special awareness she had to achieve. Just this ordinary knowing that was seeing, hearing, sensing, aware of thoughts, aware of seeking itself. One morning, she was sitting in meditation when it became suddenly, quietly, absurdly obvious. She started laughing. Right there in the meditation hall, several other nuns looked at her with concern. After the session, Lama Yeshe called her over. "You were laughing," the Lama said. "I'm sorry, Lama. It just seemed so funny." "What seemed funny?" "I've been looking for my own face," Palmo said. "For 11 years. Looking and looking. And the looking itself was what was looking. The seeing itself is what I was trying to find. It's been here the whole time. I was just looking past it. Looking for something more special. Something more profound." Lama Yeshe smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "And now I still seek," Palmo admitted. "The habit is strong, but I notice it. I see it happening. And sometimes I can rest in what's already here instead of reaching for something that seems absent. Sometimes is enough," the Lama said. "Sometimes is where we all start. The noticing loosens the seeking. And gradually, what's always been present becomes more obvious than the search for it." Palmo bowed. "It's so ordinary," she said. "I thought it would be more special," the Lama said. "More extraordinary, that's the seeking talking. Reality doesn't need to be special to be what it is. Your awareness doesn't need to be profound to be aware. A flower doesn't need to be exotic to be a flower. This moment doesn't need to be anything other than this moment." Months later, a new nun arrived at the monastery. Young, earnest, full of questions. Palmo watched her approach Lama Yeshe, asking what practices she should do, what books she should read, what experiences she should expect. Palmo smiled. She recognized that hunger, that seeking, that certainty that something crucial was missing. The new nun was sent to work in the garden. With Palmo, as they pulled weeds together, the new nun asked, Sister, how long does it take to achieve realization? Palmo thought about how to answer. What if, she said carefully, you're already what you're looking for? What if the awareness that's aware right now, aware of your question, aware of these weeds, aware of seeking itself, what if that's it? Not some future special state, but this ordinary awareness. Here now, the new nun looked confused, disappointed. I know, Palmo said gently. It's too simple, too ordinary. We want something more impressive. But that wanting, that seeking, it's just a pattern, a habit of mind. And when the seeking relaxes, even a little, what's been here all along becomes obvious. The nun didn't understand. Palmo could see it in her face. But that was okay. Palmo hadn't understood either. Not for 11 years. Understanding wasn't the point. The point was noticing the seeking, seeing the pattern, and sometimes, just sometimes, resting in what was already here, already aware, already complete, already this. You're always searching for something, aren't you? Always feeling like there's something more you need to find, achieve, become before you can finally relax, before you can finally feel okay. Maybe you're searching for the answer to what's wrong with you. Maybe you're searching for peace, for happiness, for the moment when anxiety finally stops. Maybe you're searching for understanding, for that one insight that will make everything make sense. But notice the searching itself creates the sense that something's missing. Palmo spent 11 years looking for awareness. But awareness was what was doing the looking. She was searching for something she already was, using the very thing she was searching for to conduct the search. This is what we do. We're aware right now, aware enough to read these words, to hear them in your mind, to feel your body lying here, to notice thoughts arising. Awareness is already present, but we're so busy reaching for some special state of awareness that we overlook the ordinary awareness that's already here. You do this with peace too. You search for peace. You try different techniques, different practices, different ways of being, all in pursuit of peace. But the searching itself is the opposite of peace. Reaching is not resting. Seeking is not finding. What if peace isn't something to achieve, but something that becomes obvious when you stop struggling against this moment? What if it's already here, in the simple fact of breathing, of being, of awareness itself? But I don't feel peaceful, you might say. And that's true. There are anxious thoughts, restless energy, uncomfortable sensations. But beneath all that, or around all that, or along with all that, there's the awareness of it, the knowing of it. That awareness isn't disturbed by what it's aware of. It's like the sky isn't disturbed by clouds. You've been taught to seek, to improve, to fix yourself, to become something other than what you are. And all of that seeking creates this constant sense of inadequacy, this constant feeling that here isn't quite right, that now isn't the real moment, that you aren't yet who you're supposed to be. But what if you're not broken? What if there's nothing to fix? What if the seeking itself is the only problem? Feel your breathing right now. Notice that you're aware of your breathing. You don't have to do anything to be aware. Awareness is already happening. It's noticing these words. It's noticing the body. It's noticing thoughts about whether this is working or not. That awareness, that simple, ordinary, unglamorous, knowing that's happening right now, that's what you've been seeking. Not some special awareness that arrives after years of practice. This awareness, the awareness that's already aware. And yes, Thoughts are here too. Seeking thoughts, doubting thoughts, analyzing thoughts, thoughts about whether you're doing this right. All of that is here. But it's all arising in awareness. Being known by awareness. And the awareness itself isn't disturbed by the content of what it's aware of. This is the pattern to notice. The constant reaching, the habitual sense that this isn't enough, that you aren't enough, that some other moment, some other state, some other experience would finally be the right one. And when you notice that pattern, not judging it, not trying to stop it, just seeing it clearly, something relaxes. You don't have to believe the seeking. You don't have to follow every impulse to reach for something other than this. You can be here, just as you are, aware, breathing, present, even if it feels ordinary, even if it feels like nothing special is happening, even if the mind keeps saying this can't be it. The mind has been trained to seek. It's good at seeking. It will keep offering that pattern, this sense that something's wrong, something's missing, something needs to change. But you don't have to invest in that story every time it appears. Let your jaw soften now. Let your hands rest. You don't need to seek anything in this moment. The seeking can happen. The habit is strong, but you don't need to follow it. You can rest in what's already here. Awareness, already aware. Breathing, already breathing. Life, already living itself through you. Nothing to find. Nothing to achieve. Just this. Just now. Just the simple fact of being. And yes, tomorrow you might go back to seeking. The habit will arise. But maybe you'll notice it a little sooner. Maybe you'll remember, just for a moment, that what you're seeking is what's already looking. That the awareness you're trying to find is the awareness that's trying to find it. That's enough. That remembering, even briefly, is enough. And as the pattern of seeking becomes more visible, more transparent, feel how the body settles. Nothing to reach for. Nothing to become. Just breathing. Just being. Just this moment, as it is. The blanket holds you without you needing to hold on to anything. The darkness surrounds you without you needing to push it away. Everything here is simple. Let the searching rest, just for now. Let the reaching soften. You can pick it all up again tomorrow if you need to. But right now, right here, you can simply be already whole, already aware, already home. And as the need to seek something better than this moment gently relaxes, we travel now to another teaching, another life, where someone learned what becomes possible when we stop looking past what's directly in front of us. In the year 1962, in a small monastery outside Hu, there lived a young monk named Thon who had forgotten how to wash dishes. He knew the mechanics. Of course, water, soap, scrubbing, rinsing. He had been washing dishes every evening for 3 years. But somewhere along the way, dishwashing had become something to get through, a task to complete so he could move on to meditation, to study, to the important parts of practice. His teacher, Tai Ming, was a small man in his 70s with hands gnarled from decades of work. He rarely gave formal teachings. Instead, he would work alongside the younger monks, quietly attending to whatever needed doing: cooking, cleaning, gardening, repairing the temple roof. One evening after the meal, Tan was at the washing basin, moving through the dishes quickly. His mind was already on the evening meditation session. He wanted to get there early, to get a good spot near the window where the breeze came through. "Brother Than," Taemin said softly, appearing beside him. "Where are you?" Than looked up, confused. "I'm here, Tae. Washing dishes." "Are you?" The old teacher picked up a bowl from the drying rack and looked at it carefully. "This bowl still has rice stuck to it." Than felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Tae. I'll rewash it." "That's not the point," Taemin said, setting the bowl back down. "The point is, where is your mind while your hands are washing dishes?" Than was quiet. He knew the answer. His mind was in the meditation hall. His mind was in tomorrow. His mind was anywhere but with the dishes. "Stay after the others finish," Taemin said. "I'll wash with you tonight." So while the other monks filed out to evening meditation, Than remained at the washing basin with his teacher. Taemin rolled up his sleeves slowly, deliberately. He filled the basin with fresh water, added soap, and began to wash. Than watched, waiting for the teaching, waiting for Taemin to explain what he was doing wrong, what he needed to understand. But the old teacher simply washed, one bowl at a time. His movements were unhurried. He would lift a bowl, turn it in the water, run the cloth around the inside and outside, rinse it under the clear water, set it carefully on the rack, then the next bowl. There was something hypnotic about it. The simple repetition, the complete attention. After a while, Taemin spoke. "Brother Than, why do you practice Buddhism?" Than had answered this question in his novice training. "To awaken, to see the truth of existence, to free myself and others from suffering." "Good answers," Taemin said, still washing. "But let me ask differently. Why are you here, in this monastery, right now?" "To learn from you, Tae, to practice meditation and study the Dharma." Taemin smiled slightly. "And washing dishes? What is that?" It's work that needs to be done, so we can eat again tomorrow." "Just that? Just work to get through?" Than hesitated. He knew there was supposed to be something more. "It's also practice?" he offered. "You're asking me?" Taemin laughed softly. "Brother Than, pick up a bowl. Wash it. Tell me what you notice." Than picked up a bowl. It was heavy in his hands, still warm from the rice that had been in it. He put it in the water and began to scrub. "What do you notice?" Taemin asked again. "I notice the bowl is warm. The water is warm too. The soap smells like lemongrass." "Good. What else?" "The weight of the bowl. The sound of the water. My hands moving." "And where is your mind now?" Than realized his mind was here. With the bowl. With the water. Not racing ahead to the next thing. "It's here," he said quietly. "When your mind is here," Taemin said, "washing dishes is washing dishes. When your mind is somewhere else, washing dishes is just an obstacle between you and where you want to be." He picked up another bowl. "This moment right now, with this bowl, this water, this is your life. Not the meditation session that comes after. Not your enlightenment that might come someday. This, right here." They washed in silence for a while. Than tried to keep his mind with the dishes. It was harder than he expected. His mind kept wanting to wander, to plan, to think about what Taemin had said, to wonder if he was doing it right now. It's okay that your mind wanders, Taemin said, as if reading his thoughts. That's what minds do. Just notice when it happens. Then come back. Back to this bowl. This water. This breath. Tharn noticed the temperature of the water against his skin. Not hot. Not cold. Just warm. Pleasant. Actually, he noticed how the light from the oil lamp made the soap bubbles iridescent tiny rainbows trapped in water. He noticed the scratch of the rough cloth against the smooth ceramic. Tae, he asked after a while, is this enlightenment? Just washing dishes and paying attention? Taemin was quiet for a moment. You're looking for something big again. Something special. Something that will arrive and announce itself. But what if enlightenment is just this? Being fully alive in this moment. Whatever this moment is, that seems too simple. I know. We think awakening has to be dramatic. Lightning strikes. Sudden realizations. And sometimes there are those moments. But mostly, it's this. Learning to be here. Learning to touch life directly instead of always thinking about life. Tharn picked up the last bowl. He washed it slowly, feeling the curve of it in his hands, the way the water ran over it, the satisfaction of seeing it clean and clear. Thank you, Tae, he said. For what? For teaching me how to wash dishes. Taemin smiled. I didn't teach you how to wash dishes. You already knew how. I taught you how to be with dishes, how to be with water, how to be with this moment. That's the only teaching that matters. The next evening, Than approached the dish basin differently. He wasn't in a hurry. He stood there for a moment, feeling his feet on the ground, taking a breath. Then he began. One bowl. The weight of it. The warmth. The sound of water. The movement of his hands. Another monk, Brother Kwang, was working beside him. Kwang was always rushing, always trying to finish quickly. Why are you going so slow? Kwang asked. We'll miss the meditation session. This is the meditation session, Tang said, and was surprised to hear Taemin's words coming from his own mouth. Kwang looked at him like he was crazy and hurried off with his half-clean dishes. Than smiled and continued washing. One bowl, then another, then another. Each one complete. Each one its own small world. His hands in warm water. The smell of soap. The feeling of something dirty becoming clean. The simple satisfaction of it. He noticed that his mind still tried to wander, still tried to rush ahead, still tried to make plans and worry about tomorrow. But he also noticed he could come back. Back to this bowl. Back to this moment. Back to the simple fact of being alive right here, doing this ordinary thing. A few weeks later, Taemin asked him to help in the vegetable garden. They worked together, pulling weeds, turning soil, planting seeds. Dan found himself fully present with it. The feeling of earth between his fingers, the particular green of the vegetable plants, the way the late afternoon sun slanted across the garden, the sound of birds in the trees nearby. You're getting it, Taemin said, looking at him with approval. Getting what? How to be alive. How to meet each moment without running away from it or rushing through it. The old teacher pulled up a weed and shook the soil from its roots. Most people spend their whole lives running towards something better, running away from something difficult, always running. They forget that life is only available in the present moment. But Than asked, What about planning? What about working toward goals? Aren't those important too? Of course. We plan. We set intentions. We work toward things. But we don't need to leave this moment to do that. We can plan while being fully here with planning. We can work toward things while being fully here with working. The problem isn't the planning or the working. The problem is forgetting where we actually are. Than nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. It wasn't about never thinking about the future or never having goals. It was about not abandoning this moment in favor of some imagined future moment. One morning, Than woke to the sound of rain on the temple roof. Usually he would have been annoyed. Rain meant the laundry wouldn't dry, meant the paths would be muddy, meant inconvenience. But this morning, he just listened, really listened, to the particular sound of rain on tiles, to the way it varied in intensity, to the cool moisture in the air that came through the window, to the grey light that was completely different from the usual golden sunrise. It was beautiful. Just this. Just rain. At breakfast, he ate slowly, tasting the rice, feeling the texture of the pickled vegetables, noticing the way his body felt as it received food, not thinking about what came next, not planning his day, just eating, completely, one bite at a time. Brother Quang noticed. "Why are you eating like that? Like you've never had rice before?" "Because I haven't," Tan said. "I've never had this rice before. This particular bowl, this particular morning, this particular body receiving it. It's new. It's always new." Quang shook his head. "You're becoming strange." Ten smiled. Maybe he was. But he felt more alive than he ever had. That afternoon, he was sweeping the meditation hall when Thay Min came in. "Brother Thon," the old teacher said, "I've been watching you. You've changed." Than stopped sweeping. "Have I done something wrong?" "No. You've done something right. You've started living your life instead of waiting for your life to begin." Than felt tears in his eyes, though he wasn't sure why. "Most people," Thay Min continued, "think awakening is about achieving some special state, about having profound realizations, about becoming someone different. But really, it's much simpler. It's about being fully present for the life you're already living. This life, these dishes, this rain, this breath. It seems almost too easy," Tan said. "Easy to understand," Thay Min agreed. "Very difficult to remember, because our minds are trained to seek something else, something more, something better. We forget that this right here, right now, however ordinary it seems, this is it. This is the life we've been given. This is where awakening happens, if it happens at all." Years later, Than would become a teacher himself. And when students came to him seeking profound teachings, seeking complex practices, seeking the secret to enlightenment, he would often take them to the kitchen. "Wash these dishes," he would say. "Tell me what you notice." And some of them would understand, and some of them wouldn't. Not yet. But he would keep teaching the simplest teaching of all. Be here. Be with this. Stop waiting for some other moment and live this one. When was the last time you actually washed dishes? Not physically going through the motions while your mind was somewhere else, but really washing dishes, feeling the water, noticing the soap, being with the task completely. Most of us never do this. Not with dishes, not with anything. We're always halfway somewhere else, doing this thing while thinking about that thing, going through the motions of our lives while our minds race ahead or circle back or anywhere but here. You do this right now, don't you? Even as you try to rest, even as you lie here in the dark, your mind is somewhere else, planning tomorrow, reviewing today, worrying about next week, anywhere but here, in this breath, in this moment, in this actual experiencing of being alive. Than's problem is everyone's problem. We treat the present moment like it's just something to get through on the way to the real moment. The important moment, the moment when our life will actually begin. After I finish these dishes, then I can meditate. After I get through this week, then I can relax. After I achieve this goal, then I can be happy. After I fix this problem, then I can be present. But the present moment is the only moment there is. Tomorrow never comes. It's always now. Always this. And by constantly leaving this moment in favor of some imagined future moment, you miss your actual life. What if you brought that same quality of attention that Than learned to bring to dishes? What if you brought that to this moment, right now? Not waiting for a better moment. Not seeking a more special experience. Just this. Just breathing. Just lying here. Just being. Feel the weight of your head on the pillow. Actually feel it. The pressure, the softness, the way the pillow receives the weight. Not thinking about the pillow. Not thinking about whether this is working. Just feeling. Feel the air moving in and out. Not analyzing your breathing. Not trying to breathe better. Just noticing breath happening. Cool air in. Warm air out. The gentle expansion and contraction. This is it. This is your life. Happening right now. Not when you achieve something. Not when you finally fix yourself. Not when circumstances are different. Now, this moment, this breath. And yes, your mind will wander. That's what minds do. But you can notice that. And come back. Back to breath. Back to sensation. Back to this moment that is the only moment that exists. The teaching isn't complicated. It's almost embarrassingly simple. Be here. Be with this. Stop abandoning the present moment in favor of some fantasy about a different moment. You wash dishes while thinking about meditation. You meditate while thinking about the future. You eat while planning. You talk while rehearsing what you'll say next. You lie here trying to sleep while your mind is everywhere else. What would it be like to just wash dishes while washing dishes? To just eat while eating? To just lie here while lying here? Not as a technique. Not as a way to achieve something. But just as a way to actually be alive. To actually receive your life as it's happening instead of always being somewhere else in your head. Your jaw can relax. You don't have to figure this out. You don't have to become good at it. You just notice when you've left, when your mind has gone somewhere else and you come back. That's it. That's the whole practice. Notice. Come back. Notice. Come back. Be here. Not perfectly. Not permanently. Just more often. Just a little more fully. The dishes aren't just something to get through. They're your life. The morning commute isn't just something to endure. It's your life. This moment of lying here, trying to rest, even if rest hasn't come yet, this is your life. Can you be with it? Can you let it be exactly as it is without needing it to be different? The breath continues. The body rests. The darkness holds you. And all of this is happening now. Not in some remembered past or imagined future. Now, this moment, this ordinary, unglamorous, seemingly unimportant moment. This is where life is. This is where peace is. This is where you actually are, when you stop pretending to be somewhere else. Let your breath be natural. Let your body settle. Let this moment be enough, because it is. It's all there is. And it's here for you. Every time you remember to come back to it, feel the pillow beneath your head. Not thinking about it, just feeling its presence. Feel the weight of the blanket, the temperature of the air, the gentle movement of breathing. Everything simple, everything here, everything enough. And as presence settles into this ordinary, precious moment, we move now to another teaching, another life discovering what becomes visible when we stop rushing past what's already here, waiting to be noticed. In the mountains of Bhutan, in the year 1518, there lived a young scholar named Pema who knew exactly how Buddhism should be practiced. She had studied at Takchang Monastery since childhood. She had memorized sutras, debated philosophy, learned the proper forms for every ritual. She knew the correct way to sit, the correct way to bow, the correct way to hold her hands during prayer. She knew which texts were important and which were not, which practices were pure and which were corrupted by local superstition. At 24, Pema was already teaching younger students. Her teachers praised her precision, her scholarship, her dedication to maintaining traditional forms exactly as they had been taught. One autumn afternoon, a wandering teacher arrived at the monastery. His name was Sonam, and he was old, perhaps 70, perhaps 80. He wore simple robes that had been patched many times. His face was deeply lined from years of smiling. He carried nothing but a walking stick and a small bowl. The abbot invited him to stay and offer teachings to the community. Pema attended his first teaching with notebook and pen, ready to record his wisdom. Sonam sat on the teaching cushion and smiled at the gathered monastics. Then he took out his bowl and began to eat rice from it, slowly, with obvious enjoyment. The room was silent. This was teaching time. Why was he eating? After several minutes, he set the bowl down and said, "That was delicious. Thank you." He stood up and walked out. Pema looked around, confused. Was that it? Was that the teaching? The next day, Sonam gave another teaching. This time, he sat on the cushion and stared out the window for 10 minutes. Then he said, "Did you see that bird? Beautiful," and walked out. On the third day, Pema approached the abbot. Respectfully, "Abbot, this teacher seems irregular. Is he truly qualified to teach?" The abbot smiled. "Teacher Sonam has practiced for over 50 years. He studied with the greatest masters. He has achieved deep realization. But yes, he is irregular. That's precisely why I invited him. I don't understand." "I know," the abbot said. "That's why you need him." That afternoon, Sonam was sitting by the monastery garden when Pema found him. She had questions. She had objections. She needed to understand what he was doing. "Teacher Sonam," she said formally, "may I speak with you?" "You're speaking now," he said, not looking up from the pea plants he was observing. "I mean, I have questions about your teaching methods." "Oh, I don't have methods," he said. I just do what seems appropriate. But teaching requires structure. It requires proper transmission of the Dharma. It requires— What does that pea plant require? Sonam interrupted, pointing. Pema looked at the plant. Water, sunlight, soil. Does it require your ideas about how it should grow? That's different. Is it? He finally looked at her, his eyes bright with something that might have been amusement. You have very strong ideas about how Buddhism should be practiced, about what's correct and what's not, about proper forms and improper forms. Yes, Pema felt defensive, but also curious. Yes, I've studied extensively. I know the traditions. And where do you think those traditions came from? From the Buddha, from the great masters who preserved his teachings. And before the traditions became traditions, what were they? Pema thought about this. They were NCT, to specific situations. The Buddha teaching in specific contexts. Exactly. Sonam clapped his hands together. The Buddha didn't hand down a rule book saying, "Here is the one true way to practice forever and ever." He responded to what was needed. Sometimes he gave one teaching. Sometimes the opposite teaching. He adapted. He was fresh. He met each moment as it was, not as he thought it should be. But without preserving the forms, the teachings would be lost. They would become corrupted. And by making the forms more important than what they point to, the teachings become what? Dead. Rihid. Preserved like a body in ice, perfect in form, but no longer alive. Pema sat down on the ground beside him, her notebook forgotten. So you're saying the traditions don't matter? No. No. Sonam said gently. The traditions matter very much. They're like a map. Very useful. But you, Pema, you've become so focused on the map that you've stopped looking at the territory. You study what Buddhism should be instead of discovering what it is. What's the difference? Sonam was quiet for a moment, watching a bee move from flower to flower. Should implies an idea about reality. Is just being with reality. You have very strong ideas about how Buddhist practice should look, how a teacher should teach, how a student should learn, how meditation should be done. But all those ideas, they're like glasses that tint everything you see. You're not seeing Buddhism anymore. You're seeing your ideas about Buddhism. Pema felt something uncomfortable in her chest. Are you saying my study was worthless? I'm saying your study was necessary. Like learning to read is necessary before you can read poetry. But if all you do is analyze the grammar and syntax of the poem, you miss the poem itself. You miss the life in it. So what should I do? Sonam laughed. There you go again with should. What if instead of trying to figure out what you should do, you just noticed what's actually happening right now? This moment. Pema stopped. She took a breath. She noticed the smell of earth and growing things. The cool breeze that carried the scent of coming rain. The hard ground beneath her. The sound of prayer flags snapping in the wind. That's it, Sonam said softly. That's the teaching. Not your ideas about the teaching. The actual experiencing. Right here. Fresh. New. Never been before. Over the next weeks, Pema found herself both drawn to and frustrated by Sonam. He never taught the way she expected. One day he would give a brilliant discourse on emptiness that showed profound understanding. The next day he would spend the teaching time making flower arrangements and saying nothing. One morning she found him in the kitchen, laughing with the cook while chopping vegetables. Don't you have students waiting? She asked. If they're waiting, they're not learning, he said, continuing to chop. Learning happens right here. In this chopping, in this conversation, in the texture of this carrot. He held up a piece. Look at this orange. Look at this particular grain. Have you ever really looked at a carrot before? Pema looked. Really looked. She had chopped thousands of carrots in her life, but she realized she had never truly seen one. Never noticed the variations in color, the patterns, the particular way this carrot was different from every other carrot. Fresh eyes. Sonam said, that's what practice needs. Not more knowing, more seeing, not more ideas about reality, more contact with reality itself. But how do I know what's true if I let go of all my knowledge? You don't. Sonam said simply, you don't know in advance. You discover in the moment. That's what makes it alive. That's what makes it real. Knowing in advance is just memory pretending to be wisdom. Several weeks later, Pema was leading a teaching for young students. She had prepared extensively, as always. She knew exactly what she would say, in what order, with which examples. But when she sat down on the teaching cushion and looked at the eager young faces, something shifted. She set her notes aside. Let me tell you about carrots, she said. The students looked confused. She laughed. I'm serious. How many of you have chopped vegetables in the kitchen? Hands went up. And how many of you were really there while you were chopping, really seeing the vegetable, feeling the knife, being completely present with the task? Silence. The students looked at each other, uncertain. That's what I want to teach you today. Not more ideas to add to the ideas you already have, but how to actually be present with your life. How to have fresh eyes. How to meet this moment, this particular, specific, never been before moment as it actually is, not as your ideas tell you it should be. She saw Sonam standing in the doorway, smiling. After the teaching, he approached her. You're beginning to understand. Beginning, she agreed. But it's hard. My mind wants to go back to what I know, to the safety of established ideas, to the certainty of proper forms. Of course it does. The mind loves certainty, but life is not certain. Life is happening right now, fresh, new, never the same twice. And if you're always filtering it through your ideas about how it should be, you miss the actual experience of it. So what do I do when I notice I'm stuck in ideas again? Sonam smiled. Notice. That's all. Just notice. Oh, there I am again, filtering reality through my ideas. There I am again, trying to make this moment fit my expectations. Notice. And sometimes that noticing creates a little gap, a little space. And in that space, fresh perception can arise. Months later, Sonam prepared to leave the monastery. Pema came to say goodbye. Thank you, she said. You've taught me to question everything I thought I knew. No, Sonam said, adjusting his simple pack. I taught you to hold your knowledge lightly. There's a difference. Your study has value. Your knowledge has value. But when you grip it too tightly, when you make it more important than direct experience, it becomes a cage instead of a tool. I'll try to remember that. You'll forget, he said cheerfully. Many times. You'll get rigid again. You'll get certain again. You'll start believing your ideas more than reality. And then you'll notice, and you'll soften, and you'll remember to have fresh eyes, and then you'll forget again. That's practice, not perfection. Just noticing and returning. Noticing and returning. He bowed to her. She bowed to him. And he walked down the mountain path until he disappeared around a bend. Pema stood there for a long time, feeling the wind, watching clouds move across the valley, hearing the distant sound of bells, not thinking about what it meant, not analyzing the experience, just being with it. Fresh, new, alive. You have ideas about everything, don't you? Ideas about how your life should be. Ideas about who you should be. Ideas about what peace feels like, what happiness looks like, what success means. And those ideas, they're like a filter between you and reality. You're not experiencing life directly anymore. You're experiencing your ideas about life. Pema's problem is everyone's problem. She studied so much, learned so much, accumulated so much knowledge that she stopped being able to see anything fresh. Everything new got compared to what she already knew. Everything different got judged against her ideas about what was correct. This is what knowledge does when we hold it too tightly. It becomes a cage. We think we understand, so we stop looking. We think we know how things should be, so we stop noticing how things actually are. You do this with your own experience. You have ideas about what anxiety should feel like. So when anxiety arrives, you recognize it immediately. Oh, this again. I know this. This is my anxiety. And because you've labeled it, because you've put it in a familiar box, you stop actually feeling it. You're just relating to your idea about it. What if you approached your anxiety with fresh eyes, like you'd never felt it before, without the label, without the story, without all your ideas about what it means and why it's here and how to make it go away, just this sensation, this tightness, this flutter, this quickness of breath. What is it? Actually, when you stop calling it anxiety and just feel it directly, it changes, doesn't it? When you meet it fresh, without all your pre-existing ideas, it's not the same monster it seemed to be. It's just sensation, energy, movement in the body, sometimes intense, yes, sometimes uncomfortable, but not the solid, permanent thing your ideas made it seem. This is what fresh eyes offer. Not ignorance, not throwing away everything you know, but holding your knowledge lightly enough that you can still see what's actually here. Sonam didn't reject tradition. He just refused to let tradition become more important than direct experience. He studied for 50 years, but he didn't let his knowledge stop him from seeing things fresh. You can do this too. You can notice when you're filtering your experience through ideas and expectations. When you're seeing what you think should be there instead of what actually is there. Right now, breathing is happening. But you probably have ideas about your breathing. Ideas about whether it's good breathing or bad breathing. Whether you're doing it right. Whether it's helping you fall asleep or not. What if you just felt it, fresh, like the first breath you've ever taken? Not good breathing or bad breathing. Just this movement, this sensation, this particular inhale, this particular exhale, never been before, never will be again. Let your ideas rest for a moment. Let your expectations rest. Let your judgments about whether this is working or not working rest. Just be here, fresh, open, meeting this moment without the filter of all your ideas about what this moment should be. Your body is lying here. That's a fact. But you have ideas about how comfortable it should be. Ideas about what position would be better. Ideas about what should be happening. What if you just felt it? Just this. This particular sensation of body against bed. This temperature. This position. Not good or bad. Not right or wrong. Just what's actually here when you stop comparing it to how you think it should be. The mind will want to go back to its ideas. That's fine. That's what minds do. But notice when it happens. Notice when you're thinking about your experience instead of having your experience. Notice when you're relating to ideas instead of relating to reality. And sometimes, in that noticing, there's a little gap, a little space where you can see things fresh again, where you can meet this moment as it actually is, not as your ideas told you it would be. This is what letting go really means. Not throwing everything away, not abandoning all your knowledge, just holding it lightly, lightly enough that you can still see, still feel, still experience reality directly instead of through the filter of your expectations. Let your ideas about sleep rest. Let your expectations about how this should feel rest. Let your judgments about whether you're doing it right rest. Just be here, breathing, sensing, aware, fresh, like you've never done this before, because you haven't. This particular moment, this particular breath, this particular experiencing, it's never been before. Meet it fresh. Meet it without knowing in advance what it will be. Meet it with the openness of not knowing instead of the certainty of thinking you already understand. Your shoulders can soften. Your hands can rest. You don't need to figure anything out right now. You don't need to make this moment match your ideas about what it should be. Just let it be what it is. Fresh, new, unknown, alive. Right here, right now. Beyond all your ideas about it, breathe without ideas about breathing. Just feel breath moving. Rest without ideas about resting. Just let the body be held. Everything simpler than you thought. Everything fresher when you stop filtering it through expectations. The weight of knowing can soften now. The burden of having to understand everything can rest. You can meet this moment with the openness of fresh eyes, fresh experiencing, fresh being. And as the grip of certainty gently loosens, as the need to know gives way to simple presence, we travel now to another realm, another teaching, where someone discovered the spaciousness that opens when we stop clinging to any fixed idea of who we think we are. In ancient India, during the time of the Buddha, there lived a woman named Kisa who believed she was her sadness. She had lost her young son to illness, and in her grief, she carried his small body through the village, asking everyone she met if they had medicine to bring him back to life. People thought she had lost her mind. Some turned away. Some whispered. Some tried gently to tell her that her child was gone. But Kisa could not hear them. She was grief. The grief was so total, so consuming, that she could no longer tell where the grief ended and she began. She was not a woman experiencing sadness. She was sadness itself, walking around in human form. Finally, someone directed her to the Buddha, who was teaching nearby. She approached him with her son's body. "Teacher," she said, "they tell me you can work miracles. Please, give me medicine to bring my son back." The Buddha looked at her with infinite kindness. "I can help you," he said. "But first, you must bring me a handful of mustard seeds. They must come from a household that has never known death. Kisa felt a surge of hope. This was a task she could do. She laid her son's body gently in the shade and set out into the village. At the first house, she knocked on the door. An elderly woman answered. "I need mustard seeds," Kisa said. "From a household that has never known death?" "Oh, child," the woman said. "I have mustard seeds. But death has visited this house many times. I lost my husband last year, my daughter the year before, my parents long ago." Kisa thanked her and moved to the next house. A young man answered. He had mustard seeds, but his brother had died in childhood. His grandmother had passed just months ago. House after house, the answer was the same. Everyone had mustard seeds. No one had avoided death. By evening, Kisa had visited every house in the village. She stood in the central square as the sun set, empty-handed, understanding slowly dawning. Death had visited every household. Loss was not unique to her. Grief was not hers alone. She returned to the Buddha, who was sitting exactly where she had left him. "I could not find a single household untouched by death," she said. "No," the Buddha said gently. "You could not, because there is no such household. Death comes to all. Loss comes to all. Grief comes to all." Kisa sat down in the dust before him. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered. "I thought this grief was mine. Something wrong with me. Something that defined me. And now?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Now I see that grief is not mine. It's just grief. It comes. Like a season. Like a storm. It came to me, and it has come to everyone else too." "Yes," the Buddha said. "This is the beginning of understanding. You are not your grief. Grief is an experience that arose in you, but it is not you. Just as a cloud passes through the sky, but the sky is not the cloud." Kisa looked up at the darkening sky. A few clouds drifted across the deep blue, visible only because the last light touched their edges. The sky, the Buddha continued, does not say, "I am this cloud. I am that cloud." The sky holds all clouds, rain clouds, storm clouds, clear skies, but it is not any of them. It remains spacious, open, unchanged by what passes through it. "But my grief feels so real," Kisa said. "It fills everything. How can I not be it? The grief is real," the Buddha said. "But you are the space in which it arises. You are the awareness that knows grief is present. That awareness, that spacious, knowing presence that is closer to what you truly are. Grief comes and goes. Sadness comes and goes. But the awareness that knows these things, have you ever not been aware?" Kisa thought about this. Even in her deepest grief, even in her confusion and madness, there had been awareness. Awareness of pain. Awareness of searching. Awareness of desperate hope. "No," she said slowly. "Awareness was always there. Yes. Grief is like a storm. Powerful, consuming, impossible to ignore while it's here. But it's not permanent. It arose because conditions arose. And eventually, when those conditions change, it will pass. But the space in which it arose, that awareness that has been here all along and will remain after the storm passes." Kisa felt something shift inside her. Not that the grief disappeared. It was still there, heavy and real. but she was no longer crushed beneath it in quite the same way. There was space around it now, room to breathe. "So what do I do with the grief?" she asked. "You don't need to do anything with it," the Buddha said. "Let it be there. Let it move through, as it will. But don't mistake it for who you are. You are not the weather. You are the sky that holds the weather." Over the following weeks and months, Kisa stayed near the Buddha, listening to his teachings. She learned to sit in meditation, and in that sitting, she began to see what he had pointed to. When grief arose, she noticed it. A tightness in the chest, a heaviness, tears forming, thoughts about her son, about loss, about unfairness. But she also noticed the noticing. There was awareness of all these experiences, and that awareness was not sad. It was not happy. It was not anything in particular. It was just aware, open, spacious. Some days the grief was overwhelming. On those days, she would forget. She would become the grief again. She would be swallowed by it. But then she would remember, "Oh, I am the space holding this, not the thing being held." And there would be a little more room, a little more breath. One evening, she was sitting by a river, watching the water flow past. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. An older monk came and sat beside her. His name was Ananda, and he was one of the Buddha's close disciples. They sat in silence for a while, watching the river. "You have changed," Ananda said eventually. "When you first came, you were like a person drowning. Now you are like a person standing on the shore, watching the river." Kisa nodded. "I still feel the grief. It still comes. Sometimes very strong." "Of course," Ananda said. "The river doesn't stop flowing. But you've learned you're not the river. You're the bank, the shore, the space through which the river flows." Is that what the Buddha means when he talks about not self? Part of it, Ananda said. We think we are our experiences, our sadness, our happiness, our fears, our desires. We identify with them so completely that we can't see any distinction. We are sad. We are angry. We are afraid. But these are experiences passing through. They are not what we fundamentally are. So what are we fundamentally? Ananda smiled. The Buddha asks us to look for ourselves, to investigate. Can you find a solid, permanent self anywhere? Or do you just find changing experiences, thoughts, feelings, sensations arising and passing in a space of awareness? Kisa closed her eyes. She looked for herself. She found thoughts about looking. She found the sensation of sitting. She found sounds of the river. She found the feeling of the evening breeze. But she couldn't find a solid self that owned all these experiences. Just awareness. Just knowing. Just this open presence that everything arose in. I can't find it, she said, opening her eyes. I can't find a solid me. No, Ananda said, because what you truly are is more like space than like a thing, more like the riverbank than like the water. The experiences flow through, but you, this awareness, this open knowing, you're what remains. You're what holds it all. That's strange to think about. It is, Ananda agreed, because we're so used to thinking we're the contents of our experience rather than the space in which experience occurs. We think we're the furniture in the room rather than the room itself. Months turned into years. Kisa became a devoted student of the Buddha's teachings. She eventually ordained as a nun, and her understanding of what the Buddha had shown her that first day, that she was not her grief, deepened and expanded. She learned that she was not her happiness either, not her peace, not her calm. These were also just weather passing through the sky of awareness. She was not her thoughts. Thoughts arose and passed. I should do this. I shouldn't have done that. What if this happens? I remember when. Thoughts, like clouds. Not her. She was not her body. The body changed constantly. It aged. It got sick. It got well. It was hungry, then full, tired, then rested. The body was like the river, always flowing, always changing. Not a fixed thing. Not an unchanging self. She was not even her identity as Kisa the nun or Kisa who lost her son. These two were just stories, just concepts, arising in awareness. What she was, or more accurately, what was actually here beneath all the ideas about herself, was something more like space. Awareness. Open presence. That which knew all experiences but was not identical to any experience. One day, a young woman came to the monastery. She had just lost her daughter. She was carrying the child's body, asking everyone for medicine to bring her back. Kisa approached her gently. I know where you are, she said. I was there too. Come, sit with me. They sat together in the garden. Kisa did not try to take the woman's grief away. She did not offer false comfort. She just sat with her, holding space. You think you are your grief right now, Kisa said eventually. You think the grief is all of you, that it will never end, that it defines who you are. The woman nodded, tears streaming. The grief is real, Kisa said, and it's enormous. But you are not the grief. You are the vast space in which the grief is arising. Like the sky holding a storm. The storm is powerful. It's real. But it's not the sky. And it will pass. The sky remains. I don't understand, the woman said. I know, Kisa said. I didn't either. But I'll sit with you. And when you're ready, I'll show you what was shown to me. They sat as the sun moved across the sky. Sat as shadows lengthened. Sat as the grief moved through both of them, the young woman's fresh and raw, Kisa's old and remembered. And in that sitting, there was space. Space for grief. Space for sadness. Space for loss and love and memory. Not empty space. Not cold space. But living, aware, compassionate space. The kind of space that could hold anything without being destroyed by it. You believe you are your anxiety, don't you? When anxiety is present, you don't think anxiety is arising. You think I am anxious. The distinction seems small, but it's everything. When you say I am anxious, you've identified completely with the experience. You've become it. There's no space between you and the anxiety. You are drowning in it, just like Kisa was drowning in her grief. But what if anxiety is not what you are? What if anxiety is weather passing through the sky of your awareness? Right now, lying here in the dark, you might be experiencing restlessness, thoughts racing, body tense, mind unable to settle. And your habit is to say, I can't sleep. I'm too anxious. This is who I am. But look closer. Is there anxiety? Yes. Are there racing thoughts? Yes. Is there tension? Yes. But are you those things? Or are you the awareness that knows those things are present? The awareness that notices there's anxiety right now, is that awareness anxious? Or is it just aware, noticing, knowing, holding space for the anxiety to be there? Like the sky holds storm clouds. The sky doesn't become the storm. It remains sky. Spacious, open, unchanged at its fundamental nature, even when wild weather moves through it. You've spent your whole life thinking you are the weather. I am sad. I am happy. I am worried. I am calm. Identifying completely with each state as it arises, as if that state defines you. But none of those states last. Sadness comes and goes. Happiness comes and goes. Anxiety comes and goes. If you truly were these states, what would you be when they pass? Would you cease to exist when sadness ends? Would a new you be born when happiness arrives? No. Something remains constant. Something that witnesses all these changing states. And that something, that awareness, that knowing presence, that's what you are. Not the clouds, the sky. This doesn't mean the anxiety doesn't matter. It doesn't mean the grief isn't real. Kisa's grief was absolutely real. The pain of losing her son was not imaginary. The Buddha didn't tell her to pretend she wasn't grieving. He showed her that she was not identical to the grief, that there was space for the grief, that she was the vastness that could hold even that enormous pain without being destroyed by it. You can do this with anxiety, with restlessness, with the racing thoughts that keep you awake. Feel the anxiety. Actually feel it. Don't run from it. Don't try to make it go away. Just feel where it lives in your body. Notice the tightness, the flutter, the pressure, and notice that you're noticing. There's the sensation, and there's the awareness of the sensation. They're not the same thing. The awareness is not tense. The awareness is not restless. The awareness is just aware, open, spacious, like the sky. When you realize this, really realize it, not just think about it, something shifts. You're no longer drowning in the anxiety. You're holding space for it. There's you, and there's the anxiety, and there's room for both. The anxiety might not go away. It might still be there, as real and uncomfortable as ever. But you're no longer crushed beneath it, because you've remembered, I am not this. I am the space in which this is arising. This is what the Buddha meant about not self. Not that you don't exist, but that you're not what you think you are. You're not the changing contents of your experience. You're the unchanging awareness in which all experience arises. Let the tightness in your chest be there. Don't fight it. You're not the tightness. You're the spacious awareness that knows the tightness is present. Let the thoughts race. You're not the thoughts. You're the vast open presence that watches thoughts arise and pass, like clouds moving across the sky. Let the restlessness move through your body. You're not the restlessness. You're the stillness that remains, even when restless energy flows through. This is freedom. Not freedom from the experience, but freedom from the tyranny of believing you are the experience. Freedom from drowning in it. Freedom from being crushed by it. You are the sky. Always have been. You've just been so identified with the clouds that you forgot. Feel the space around the anxiety. Feel the awareness that holds it. That awareness is not disturbed. It's like space itself. You can't disturb space. You can't harm it. You can't damage it. Things move through it, but it remains untouched. That's what you are. Not the vulnerable, fragile, easily damaged self you thought you were, but this vast, open, indestructible awareness that can hold anything. Even this moment, even this discomfort, even this insomnia, all of it can be held in the spaciousness of what you truly are. Let your shoulders rest. Let your jaw soften. You don't have to be the tension. You're the space that holds the tension. And space is always at rest, even when what moves through it is restless. Breathe. And notice that you're noticing breath. Sky holding clouds. Space holding experience. Awareness holding this moment, exactly as it is. You are not what you thought you were. You are so much vaster, so much more spacious, so much more free. Rest in this spaciousness, not trying to create it, just recognizing it's already here. The awareness that knows these words, that awareness is not tired, not worried, not anything in particular, just aware, just present, just this open space. Everything can be here. Thoughts, sensations, sounds, all of it held in this vast openness that you are. And as the tight grip of identification gently loosens, as you remember, you are the sky and not the clouds. We move now toward a final teaching, where all these words and ideas dissolve into something even simpler, even quieter, even more like rest itself. In 13th century Japan, on a mountain where clouds moved through the trees like slow breath, there lived a monk named Ryokan who had finally stopped trying. He had practiced for 40 years, studied under masters, memorized texts, learned proper forms, achieved what others called realization. And then, at 63 years old, he left the monastery and moved into a small hermitage so plain it barely kept out the rain. There was nothing there. A mat, a bowl, a robe, the mountain, the sky, the days passing. Ryokan would sit each morning, not sitting to achieve anything, not sitting to become anything, just sitting because sitting was what the body did when it settled onto the mat. One autumn, a young monk climbed the mountain to ask him for teaching. The monk had heard Ryokan was enlightened, and he wanted to know the secret. He found the old man sitting outside his hut, facing a pine tree. "Master Ryokan," the young monk said, bowing, "I have come seeking instruction." Ryokan didn't turn around. "I'm not a master, just an old man who sits. But I've heard you achieved enlightenment, that you know the truth." Ryokan laughed, a sound like wind through leaves. "I don't know anything anymore. That's the only truth I've found." The young monk stood there, uncertain. Then, "What should I do? How should I practice?" Ryokan finally turned and looked at him. His face was weathered, deeply lined, but his eyes were soft. "Do you see that pine tree?" "Yes." "What does it do?" The monk thought about this. "It grows. It stands there. It's just a tree." "Yes," Ryokan said. "It doesn't try to be a tree. It doesn't practice being a tree. It doesn't worry about whether it's enlightened or not. It just stands there. Roots in earth, branches in sky, pine tree, complete. The monk didn't understand, but Ryokan had already turned back to face the tree. After a moment, the young monk sat down beside him. They sat in silence. The wind moved through the pine branches. Somewhere far below, a stream made its endless sound. Clouds drifted past, so close they seemed to move through the clearing rather than above it. The monk tried to understand what Ryokan meant, tried to figure out the lesson, tried to grasp the teaching, but slowly, because there was nothing else to do, his trying began to quiet. He noticed the coolness of the air, the smell of pine, the way the light changed as clouds passed, the simple fact of sitting there, body on earth, breathing without effort. He sat there for hours, sometimes thinking, sometimes not thinking, sometimes aware of sitting, sometimes unaware of anything at all. When the sun began to set, painting the clouds pink and gold, Ryokan spoke again. "That's all there is," he said quietly. "Just this. Nothing more. Nothing less." The monk stayed for several days. Each morning, he would find Ryokan sitting. Each evening, the same, sometimes facing the pine tree, sometimes facing the wall of his hut, sometimes just sitting in the clearing with eyes closed. Ryokan never gave teachings, never explained anything. When the monk asked questions, Ryokan would shrug or smile, or sometimes say things that made no sense. "What is the purpose of practice?" "Birdsong," Ryokan would say. Or "the way moss feels." Or nothing. On the third day, the monk stopped asking. He just sat with the old man, breathing, being, nothing special happening. No insights arriving, no grand realizations, just the mountain, the sky, the quiet. At some point he couldn't say when the monk noticed he had forgotten why he came, forgotten what he was seeking. The questions that had seemed so urgent now seemed far away, like voices from another life. There was just this sitting, this breathing, this pine tree, still standing there. These clouds, still moving. This moment, and then this moment, and then this moment. On the morning he left, the monk bowed to Ryokan. "Thank you for the teaching," he said. Ryokan looked confused. "I didn't teach you anything." "I know," the monk said. And somehow, that was the truth. Years later, the monk would tell others about his time with Ryokan. How the old man had shown him that practice isn't about becoming something. It's about being what you already are. Not striving, not reaching, not even understanding. Just sitting, just breathing, just this body, this moment, this aliveness that doesn't need explaining. Ryokan lived alone on that mountain until he died at 74. They found him sitting by the pine tree, facing the valley, a slight smile on his weathered face. The last poem he wrote was found in his hut, brushed in his shaky hand, just sitting, nothing to gain, wind in the pines. There's nothing more to understand now. All these stories, all these teachings, all these words, they were just fingers pointing at something that can't be captured in words. And now, here you are, lying in the dark, breathing, being, nothing to achieve, nothing to become. Feel the weight of your body, not trying to feel it, just noticing it's already here. already resting, already held. The breath continues, in and out, without your help, without your attention, just happening, the way clouds happen, the way wind happens, the way everything happens when you stop trying to make it happen. You don't need to remember any of this. You don't need to hold on to insights or teachings or anything at all. Let it all dissolve. Let it all drift away like morning mist. Just this. Just breathing. Just being. Just the simple fact of existing. Here, now, without needing to understand what that means. Your shoulders can soften. They know how to rest. Your jaw knows how to release. Your hands know how to lie still. Everything in you knows how to simply be. You've just been too busy trying to help. Feel the darkness around you. Not empty darkness. Living darkness. Full of rest. Full of quiet. Full of space for everything to simply be what it is. If sleep comes, let it come. If it doesn't, let that be too. You're not trying to control anything anymore. Not trying to make anything happen. Just here. Just this. Just being. The pine tree doesn't worry about being a pine tree. The mountain doesn't worry about being a mountain. And you don't need to worry about being anything other than what you already are. Let the weight of knowing fall away. Let the burden of understanding dissolve. Let all the reaching, all the trying, all the effort, let it all rest. Just breathing, just being, just this moment, complete, exactly as it is. And if thoughts come, am I doing this right? Is this working? Let them be like clouds. They come. They drift. They go. The sky remains. You are the sky. Vast. Open. At rest. Always at rest. Even when things move through you. Feel the pillow. Feel the blanket. Feel the air. Feel the breathing. Not thinking about any of it. Just feeling. Just being. Just this. Nothing more needed. Nothing more to learn. Nothing more to become. Just this. Just rest. Just being. Just you. Breathing continues. Soft and steady. Body rests. Heavy and held. Everything simple now. Everything quiet. The stories dissolve. The teachings fade. Only this remains: breathing, being, resting. Let yourself drift. Let yourself forget. Let yourself simply be, without knowing what that means. Nothing to hold. Nothing to remember. Nothing to understand. Just this breath. Just this darkness. Just this moment. Dissolving into rest. And as everything softens into simply being, we arrive at the end of these hours together, where words give way to silence, and silence gives way to sleep. Through these hours together, we've traveled across centuries and continents, from Japanese monasteries to Korean mountains, from Chinese meditation halls to Tibetan peaks, from Vietnamese gardens to Bhutanese temples, from ancient India to quiet hermitages where old monks sat facing pine trees. And in all these places, across all these traditions, the teaching was always pointing to the same simple truth. This moment is enough. You are enough. Right here, right now, exactly as you are. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to become someone different before you can rest. The the fresh eyes, the beginner's mind, the not knowing they're not achievements. They're what's left when you stop trying so hard to be certain about everything. Let these reflections dissolve now. Let them work in ways you don't need to understand. Wisdom doesn't require your conscious effort. It moves through you the way water moves through earth, finding its own channels, nourishing in its own time. These stories, these teachings, they're contemplative in nature, offered for gentle reflection and rest, not as any form of medical care or treatment. Your breath continues. Your body rests. And somewhere beneath all your thoughts about yourself, beneath all your ideas about who you should be, there's just this simple being, simple awareness, simple presence. Always been here, always will be. Tomorrow, you might notice something shifted. Not dramatically, just a small opening. A moment when you see something fresh. A breath when you remember you don't have to know everything. A pause when you recognize you're the space holding the storm, not the storm itself. Or maybe you won't notice anything at all. And that's perfect too. If this journey brought you some peace tonight, if these stories offered even a moment of rest, consider subscribing to this channel or sharing it with someone else who lies awake at night, seeking both sleep and wisdom. Your support helps us continue creating these contemplative spaces for rest. You are enough. Right now, exactly as you are. Not someday. Not after you fix everything. Now. Let your eyes stay closed. Let your breathing soften. Let everything you've heard tonight settle into places deeper than memory. And let yourself rest finally, completely, without needing to understand what rest means or how to do it right. You've tried so hard for so long. You can stop trying now. Just breathe. Just rest. Just be. Good night.